used to live in Alabama. I hear they call that hell. It's worse than California. It can't be, right? So everybody says that, like Sweet Home Alabama. They talk about going so far down south that it's another country. I love that movie, by the way. It came out way back in the day. I don't know, like 20 years ago or something, close to that. And I was down in Disneyland at the time because the company that I worked for took all the managers, store managers, to Disneyland for a store manager meeting, and it was a workshop, and you had the motivational speakers and everybody there, but they were taking us to the Disneyland Grand Hotel, and I got there early with a buddy of mine, my roommate, who was also a store manager for the company. We went down early and got our own hotel room, not at the Disney Grand Hotel, because those prices are insane, and now even worse than they were then. And then we went into Disneyland thinking, okay, we have a choice, right? They're bringing all of the managers in for a meeting. Chances are we're going to get to go to the adult park. So we'll go to the old Disneyland, the kids park, and we'll go around there for a day, and then we'll get to see the adult park. Turns out they didn't give us the adult park. We went to the other park, the regular old Disneyland. So we ended up getting to see that, but that was kind of cool because being at I don't know if my company paid for this, but they must have. Being at the Disney Grand Hotel after the park closed to the public and everybody was gone, we got to go out in the park and ride the rides for free with our drinks. Not a joke. So we were bombed riding rides, having a blast, getting to do it at nighttime with no one else in the park, no waiting. You go to the ride, you only have to wait if there's other people in front of you that got on the ride. So it was pretty badass, right? So Denise, welcome. So yeah, the song was so backwards, right? You're talking about Sweet Home Alabama, right? Right, Skinner. Sweet Home Alabama. Okay, so let's start talking about the. But anyway, I had a blast there, and I got drunk. Well, real quick, I'll tell you that story. The first night there, I was drinking martinis with a buddy of mine, and we got so hammered. Literally, by the time we staggered back to the hotel from Disneyland, which there was a gate that opened to Disneyland to inside the park from the Disney Grand Hotel. So we staggered back. I couldn't remember my room number. So I had to go to the front desk and show my ID. And then I had to have an escort, and so did he. We had to have escorts to help us find our rooms and to get us in there. We were so hammered. Everybody was, apparently. And it was a blast. But we only got to see one side of Disneyland. We didn't get to see the adult theme park, which sucked. If we'd have known that, we'd have gone to that. Okay. So we just finished up with Raw talking about the coalition of Venus, the quarantine of this solar system, and what everybody perceives as alien spaceships that are flying around the Earth, not being that, in fact, being drones of our own government, and aliens who actually live in the planet and on the planet that you're unaware of. And then most of what we think are encounters with UFOs are in fact not real. They are in fact a figment of our imagination, not done because we're crazy, done because we want to have that event. That literally, if you didn't see last week's show, you should go back and watch that at the end. Question 26, 27, 28, or 26, 25, 26, and 27. Because 28 and 29 were just how is the channeler doing, which was Carla, and and then I guess we'll just have to go to a different session to finish the questions. Okay. You were probably on, Casey. You were probably on, which I didn't share it to this week, the psychic reading and development page. I didn't send it there. I sent it to my page, and then Orion Rising, and then Orion Rising on YouTube. And if you could share it to that would be cool, because I didn't get a chance to do that. Right. Sometimes I do it there. I kind of go back and forth. One week I'll share it to my page because I can share to 3. And then the next week I'll share it to psychic reading. And then so I kind of switch back and forth. And today, so you were probably there. and it didn't go live there, but it did go live on Orion Rising, the page, not the group. So if you go to the group Orion Rising, I think there's a link that gets forwarded there unless I have to do it, and that's always a problem. And I usually try to do it during the intro, but I was running a little bit late. I had to jump up, make sure that my mother had something to watch on television, and let her know where I was and what I was doing. That today's Friday, which means I talk about the universe and spirituality and God and all that. Okay, so Julie, welcome. And Casey, hi, by the way. I didn't say hi, I just answered what you were saying in the chat. Right? Okay, so let's continue on with session 7. Okay. If this will start there, if not, I'll have to try and forward it again now that it crashed on me for no apparent reason. And I don't know why. It just did it while I didn't even notice. It must have been while the intro was playing and I was on that screen instead of looking down at the bars that I had open. And then all of a sudden I looked down there when I came on, there was nothing on the screen right here. And I'm like, what the heck? And I looked down and realized it crashed. I don't know what this program's problem is. I'm going to have to find another one. This one's free and I don't pay for it. So because of that, I kind of put up with every now and then it sounds froggy. I haven't figured out why it does that. And then just for no reason, every now and then it just crashes. And then it's fine. It's weird. Okay. So I'm going to pull that up full screen here. And there we go. So this is the Law of One, Session 7. And this happened, you can see January 25th, 1981. You can see on your screen. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right into that. For those of you who might be new, hopefully you read the description so you understand what's going on. The LL Research Group, I'll give you the quick 411 on it. And the right no, I'm sorry, Casey said I guess I'm chopped liver. I apologize for that. I didn't mean that. I go back and forth on that. You happen to choose probably the one page I was not going live to today, because I always go live on Orion Rising, the page on Facebook, and Orion Rising, the page on YouTube. The new one, after they deplatformed me and erased over 400 episodes of Orion Rising, because I wouldn't allow them to have my bank account and medical records and everything else, which Facebook's doing anyway. We just heard about that, right? Facebook is, I know you're just teasing, Casey. I know that. But Facebook is doing exactly that. It just came out in the news in the last few days that a whistleblower admitted that Facebook is listening in on and paying attention to everything that is being said on Facebook, and anything that is in any way not agreeable to the political party that's in power in the religion that is nefariousness. They send that information to them, and the national security, the Department of Security, the DOD or the DOJ, then is tapping and checking everything you said and tapping into you and getting a warrant to then listen into all your conversations, your emails, and everything that you post online or anybody sends to you or any comments that you make. So I know, because I have been told many times on world and off world, that everything that I say is already being and has been for a long time. I was a member of the Irish Republican Army from 1986 to, well, I never really retired, but I'm kind of retired, because what I did was what I did for them, I'm now doing globally. For a lot of us did that. When Anonymous got taken out, a lot of us moved to the coalitions and did exactly that. So I'm now doing what I did for the Irish Republican Army. I'm now doing it for World Coalitions. Not afraid to tell that live. Not afraid for anyone in the world to hear me say that, because like saying I was in the Hells Angels, which I was not. If you do that and you're lying, people come to you and you get in trouble for it. The Irish Republican Army are now the Secret Service of Ireland. If I claimed that I was a part of that, and I was not, because some people go, you were not. Oh, yeah, actually I was, but not with this alias that I'm using now that you guys are watching. It was 2 other aliases besides this one that I was using. I wasn't using this alias. This alias was another alias that I've been using since around that time, as a pen name, right, as my professional name. My real name is very similar to this name. In fact, my first and middle name are the exact names that I was born with on my birth certificate. So if I had been doing that, I would somebody would have turned, especially since I'm still friends with people that are and were in the IRA. If I was lying, they would be like, "That guy's full of crap," right? He never did anything for the Irish Republican Army. But I did. I have people that can prove that. I have people that are friends of mine still that know because I had pulled them into Sinn Féin as well. Shane Fein is the actual way you say it with the Irish accent. I was saying it with the West Coast Irish accent, which the East Coast Irish people would laugh at me and go, "What the fuck did he just say? He's not even speaking Irish right." So, anyways, so now I do the same thing for the World Coalitions, and I'm not afraid. People are like, "Aren't you afraid of the men in black coming to your house?" No, no, I'm not. If only, right? I would mug them and take their secret devices if they had any. No, I'm kidding. But I'm not worried about those people. They've already tried to stifle me on Facebook. They went to delete me once, had me deleted, and after 4 days of being deleted, I was miraculously not deleted anymore. That happened 5 years ago now. And then YouTube has deleted me, and I'm all right with that. I don't care because all my stuff is no longer on Google. Oops. Oh well, it's out everywhere else in the ether to the entire world. That's why I don't worry about Facebook and any Google products. I'm going to be moving off this platform. Everybody else that does this is already off of both of those platforms and on other platforms. I just haven't moved off of this platform and Google platforms yet. Which I will be doing. I'm already on other platforms, but not on the MP4 file. Actually, I am, but I'm not. I don't go live there every week, which I'm going to start doing because of how bad that these people are and how much they're stifling people. I'm going to move off of there. So I'll let you guys know ahead of time, and the links will still be there. I'll do the same thing that everybody in the coalitions did. They do their show live somewhere else and then link it to YouTube and link it to Facebook, so you guys can then watch it. But I'll be pulling you off of here. I get more hits on my MP3 file than I do on the video file that I'm doing currently. So after this, I'll post it, not even live, and I'll get more hits. More people listen to it around the world than do on these two channels. So I'm not concerned with these channels. I go live here because this is what I've done since the beginning. But because things are the way they are, until these people are put into their places and not have the legal right to do what they're doing, until that happens, they're going to continue to abuse their power. The only way, as best they can, to try and stifle voices. I don't talk about their religion anymore, and that the reason that I do sometimes a little bit, like I'm doing now, but I stay away from that because they don't care about me talking about this religion. They don't care about me talking about spirituality. They used to murder us over this, right? I mean, there was a time literally when Socrates said the world wasn't flat and he thought it might be round. They made him drink poison and die for saying that. So that was how intolerant the world was. People think, "Oh, it's the worst time ever in the history of the planet." Dude, a guy said, "I think the world is round." And they said, "You are convicted of an insane thought, and because of that, you will drink this poison and die." And he fucking did it. I would be like, "Fuck you. No, you're going to have to choke it down my fucking gullet. Die." And I would, freedom, I'd have been William Wallace. Screw you. I'm not drinking that shit. But I'm sure he made a big speech that they erased from history and said some words, "and I die now, and with my convictions," and, something very gallant that they erased from history. No one gets to know about. All they know is the story. They don't know what he actually said. Okay, so we already got that up on the screen. So let me go ahead and go over there and let's start. Like I said, January session 7, January 25th, 1981. The Law of One, session 7. Let's start. Let's see if it starts here. Let's hope that it does and it doesn't freak out on me.
25, 1981. 7.0 RA, I am RA. I greet you in the love and the light of our infinite Creator. I communicate now. Question 7.1 Questioner, you mentioned that you were a member of the Confederation of Planets. What avenues of service, or types of service, are available to members of the Confederation? Would you describe some of them? Answer RA, I am RA. I am assuming that you intend the service which we of the Confederation can offer, rather than the service which is available to our use. The service available for our offering to those who call us is equivalent to the square of the distortion/need of that calling divided by, or integrated with, the basic law of one in its distortion, indicating the free will of those who are not aware of the unity of creation.
So as usual, Raw goes right into like math to explain what exactly the square root. Wait a minute, what? The service available of our offering to those who call us is equivalent to the square root of the distortion/need of that calling divided by or integrated with the basic law of one in its distortion. That's hilarious, right? So, so in a nutshell, without the crazy math that he just threw, because Don is in fact a nuclear physicist, right? So without the crazy math, right? The entire, the distortion. You have to realize that the word distortion being used by Raw is literally would mean confusion, or usually it means confusion on a grandiose scale. That's why he uses the word distortion. But the reason he uses the word distortion, or I can't say they, because it is an entire species. I always, unfortunately, use that vernacular because it's like saying understand. It's so programmed into your brain case, right? I mean, they called this human race, which I don't like. I wish they would call it beings and get the word man out of there, because it still has a sex to it. Before it was just man. The male dominated religions and politics were so arrogant that they called the entire species man. Right, the species is man. Well, in the Bible, the man was created first, and the woman, right? Which is weird because in German the word "wohl" means where, right? Where man, wohl man, right? So in German that would be wohlmannen, right? But still, what the word wohl means where. So wohlman, the where man, is sort of a mix of man and something else according to ancient humans. So that's why I don't like the word human. I don't like the word man just as a catchphrase, and so I hate to say he. This is going into what people choose to be associated with. And I don't think that Raw would choose to. Raw says I am. We are and I am, but I don't know that Raw would choose to be a male-dominated society, right? So I apologize when those slip out and I say understand, because I don't stand under anyone, and none of you do either, right? So Julie says, basically, how changed is our battery? Is this what we're saying? Is our battery, and how is our? Let me put this up on the screen. I may have to put my glasses on to read this. I don't have them on right now. Basically, equated to, or us to, a cell phone. Well, in some respects, yes. In some respects, yes. But that's not what he was referring to, or see, there again I go. They were referring to with that mathematical equation, right? Because of the distortion, the square root of the distortion, meaning the sum total of the lowest breakdown, right? The lowest common denominator of distortion due to that times or multiplied by or added to the integer. Now I'm starting to get too technical, right? Meaning that they're here for any and all queries that do not in any way infringe on the laws. These are those things that are the prime directives of the universe. If you know Star Trek and you know what that means, the prime directive is that you can't interfere with the natural growth of a society in any way. So you can't give them technology or even show them technology or show yourself to be anything other than trying to fit into their reality that they have. That way, you don't influence their future existence, which is what Ra did when they came here and built the pyramids, right? And they didn't just build. Everybody thinks when I say that, and when everyone says that, oh, they built the 3 pyramids on Giza. No, and if you watch the video, those of you watching or listening on the MP3 file, you can't see the videos, but if you watch my video intro during the music, at the very end, before it says, my name and the law of one, the last image is the image of three pyramids in Mexico, three pyramids in Egypt, three pyramids in China, and then of course the Orion's belt, the three universes from Orion's belt, and it says, "Do you understand now?" So Ra, when they were here, they built pyramids worldwide. Okay, not just in Egypt. There was a time, you have to realize, during the what we would call the pre-dynastic era of in Egypt, not the post. The post-dynastic is where all the pharaohs and everything that was going on. That was when the corruption happened. Before that, in the pre-dynastic era, the pyramids worldwide and all of the obelisks worldwide were charged because of where they are, and all of the Stonehenge and other henges and other places around the world were built on ley lines. I know you people over in Europe hate to use that. When we Americans use that term, it's like when we say check your ego at the door. They get pissed off when we're saying, oh, well, we need the ego to learn. And yes, we do. But us saying check your ego at the door is completely obvious to us, because we're saying don't bring your problems with your ego into this conversation. Keep your ego in check so that I don't offend your ego when I say something, and that charges your ego and triggers you. Let's keep all that nefarious religion out of our conversations and out of our psyche while we're dealing with this. Let's deal with everything as an adult. That's what that means when Americans say check your ego at the door. That says, I don't want any children here. I want people who are actually awake and in control of their ego to have adult conversations without having to say all of that. It's easier just to say, check your ego at the door. And Americans understand, there's that word again that slips out because of my programming. Americans realize what that means. Okay. So there's cultural differences that we have to get over worldwide, where people misunderstand what other people are saying. And again, one of those things, when we say ley lines in America, we mean the energy lines of the world. And I know that because I have many friends in Europe, and that doesn't mean the same thing in Europe. Okay. So yeah, many arches, right, have huge magnets. And then he said, what arches? Well, you have to realize what Karen's talking about, Heath, is that I've done, and Karen knows this, I've done several shows on shapes and their energy. And when you have an arch shape, that's why if you have a dome, that's why it was called a domicile, mind you, by most countries. If you build a structure, a housing structure or something else, and you have a certain shape, creates a certain energy, right? And arches, because they're shaped like, if you look on the screen, let me put it up on the screen, you see the little magnet shape in what she's saying. Because it's shaped like that, that charges, you end up charging, not always, but you can charge any shape, especially if it's metallic or crystalline, with energy. That's why the pyramids were shaped the way they were, not to be mistaken for the step pyramids, which have a different function but are also were charged with energy. Okay, they know that almost all of the pyramids in South America, going into Central, and now they're discovering them in North America, the pyramids had mixed in on the, especially on the platforms on top of the step pyramids, had mica mixed in, and they were covered with mica. And mica is in fact what they cover the when they have the underside of the spaceships and a re-entry of the pods and the space shuttles. They have foam, and what they cover the foam in is mica, because mica can withstand, like 3 or 4 Kelvin. Okay, and if you know anything about that, a Kelvin unit is that of solar of the sun of Sol. So like the sun. I don't know how many Kelvin it is, but it's not a lot. It's not like a billion Kelvin, right? So that's like super amount of heat. So that when the air turns to plasma because of the friction, we had that problem here in the United States where there was a hole in one of the coverings, and it killed everybody on board and blew up the space shuttle. That happened some 20 some odd years ago, right? So those structures had mica, and there's only one place where there's a mica mine that mica happens naturally. But when they have vitrification of crystalline material like sand and other rocks that are crystalline, sandstone, that is another form of mica, by the way, and that only happens through something that is 2 or 3 Kelvin or above. So that would be a nuclear explosion or a serious coronal mass ejection from the sun, a sun storm that blows off of the sun and literally reaches the earth and scorches the earth. Okay, so let's get back to the law of one and what's going on here, right? Yeah, see, Casey says we used to dig for mica when I was a kid, and the adults said that it wasn't good for anything. Right? Well, it was, and the space and NASA uses it all the time. Every single re-entry program from any rocket worldwide, they use a really thick foam that they cover with mica. Paint it. They turn it into a liquid, and they paint the bottom of the foam with mica and glue them to the spaceships, and then the actual pods that you see, the old style Bell, the Declocked style pods that would come through reentry, they just painted the entire bottom of that metallic surface with mica, and it would withstand all of that. It's a beautiful crystal. I remember I was watching there was a TV series back in the 90s called Warehouse 13, which if you guys have never seen it, you should look it up on sci-fi because it's very awake. But there was a woman in there whose name was, in fact, Micah, right? And I actually have pictures of her on my page because I have a thing for Black Irish women, and even though she's Canadian, she's Black Irish, and you can go on my page and you can see there's like three or four women there that I have a lot of pictures of that are Black Irish. What we in Ireland call Black Irish, and that's the light-skinned, raven-haired women with blue or green eyes, or men and women. My clan is a Black Irish clan, but I'm a genetic throwback, so I have the freckles, and I did used to have red hair, right? I was a ginger, right? Right. I love Star Trek, right? So Heath knows about the Prime Directive. Okay, so if it doesn't infringe on the prime directive, to circle back to the law of one and stay on point, if it doesn't, it's that is what he was talking about, where we're literally trying to get down to the basics of, meaning the square root of the distortion. What is the basic level of your misunderstanding, times, or with the integration of knowledge that does not infringe in any way on any of the laws, free will, chaos, or any of the other laws, the first few laws of the universe, or laws of one, as it were. All right, so let me go back over here and continue.
Question 7.2. Questioner, from this, I am assuming that the difficulty you have contacting this planet at this time is the mixture of people here, some being aware of the unity, some not, and for this reason you cannot come openly or give any proof of your contact. Is this correct? Answer: RA, I am RA. As we just repeated through this instrument, we must integrate all of the portions of your social memory complex in its illusory disintegration form. Then the product of this can be seen as the limit of our ability to serve. We are fortunate that the law of service squares the desires of those who call. Otherwise, we would have no beingness in this time/space at this present continuum of the illusion. In short, you are basically correct.
Now, I wanted to point out that he said, and I did this before, and I wanted to point out it again, that they, here I went with the he again, in the heat of passion, I immediately jumped into the vernacular that is familiar in your brain and said he instead of they, pointed out that this is an illusion. Okay. And I wanted to stress I was just reading creation stories of Aztec, the Olmec, the Mayans. I was reading creation stories from everybody and comparing them. And this is what I do. I'm a nerd, right? Being a theologian, you do this. So I wanted to point out because Raw states they talk about at some point. I don't know if it was already in the first six sessions or if it's coming up, but they talk about a time when, of course, I've covered this when they were the ones who screwed us up and got us stuck by giving information to the people in Egypt, and the priests were in fact nefarious, evil, egoic, living in service to self, and they kept the knowledge for themselves. And the reason that they did that was that they were the descendants of those people who believe they own this planet, that came from Atlantis when that war happened, which is talked about in the edicts from the Indians in India. The Germans also have a version of this, and the Romans have a version of this, and others too, but we don't have a lot of their information. And this is what I'm leading to and alluding to, of the War of the Gods. Okay, and that when that happened, that was when people who were in service to others got tired of the people in service to self doing harm to this planet, and a war ensued, and the evil people left the planet. But before they did, they tried to destroy the human race. That was the deluge that happened here on the planet, that everybody says that God did it because God was angry, right? Children afraid of the dark, making up stories, and they don't have actual education, are always going to point to a God and say God did this. People do it now. I know people here in the United States, something bad happens to them, they're like, why does God let this happen? That right there is ignorance of the universe and how the universe works. Okay, that's not their fault, right? Like Jesus said on the cross, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Okay, so now let's look at when Raw was talking about being here and they screwed up and got us stuck into this overlay on our matrix that is here, that is keeping everybody here. They also talked about people in South America who in fact ascended, and we now know in history that there was many races there that just disappeared. The Aztec, the Mayans, there's Incans, a few just disappeared off the face of the earth. And they didn't go someplace else. It wasn't like there was a famine or there was something happened or a war, and there's no bodies, and they didn't integrate with the society. So there's no influx anywhere on the world of the population of about 8 million people in South America that integrated someplace else or migrated someplace else. So these people just disappeared off the face of the earth, right? Some people would say, oh, aliens came down and culled them and took them away. They would rather believe that than to believe that there was a spiritual event, okay? So Casey says, I'm a nerd too. Yes, right? I'm a full-on nerd. So uh, Raw says what happened with those people actually ascended because they became awake and they understood what was going on. There's that word again. They gathered what was and assimilated the knowledge and integrated that into their society. Why do I say all of that? I say all of that because if you look up the people from the Amazon region of South America and read what their creation story is about, the creation myth. They always call it a myth, right? If you look up creation story, it's harder to find, but if you look up creation myth of any region, you'll get the so-called myth, right? This is the stuff that they do where they up is down, down is up, left is right, right is left. So they throw in a lie. There is no definitive proof that this creation story is true, therefore it's a myth, right? Well, they say that Jesus was a myth, that he was created by the Romans, and the Buddha was a myth because there's no definitive proof that he existed, and no one like Thor and Odin, there's no definitive proof. Although the Queen of England, who is now deceased, her clan claims that they can trace their DNA back to Thor, which is actual bullshit and a lie. Okay, so The reason I say that is if you look up the people of that region, one of their creation stories that they believed, and then that belief died out because those people disappeared, but said in their creation story that this earth was not real and that it was a dream state and that it was an illusion. There's only one group of people on this planet today, besides those people in South America, that have that in their story, and that is the Aborigines in Australia. No one else has that as part of their story, that this is an illusion, except for now, right? And then in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were so people not in South America but over in Asia, right? Asia Minor, right? The Middle East had that story as well, and it was taken out of the Bible, and it was not in just one book, it was in multiple books that were added into the different Bibles at the time. And when they, in the Council of Nicaea, when Constantine, and then David as well, when they were trying to consolidate the Bible and of course change it to what they wanted it to say, they took out a bunch of books. There's more books missing from the current all the big three Bibles than that was taken out, truthfully. Okay. And some of the stuff is now scattered throughout the world, and it's still not officially looked at as all of those books that should have been in the Bible. For instance, the Colburn Bible in Scotland, the first 6 books, 6 or 7 of the 13 books. And there's that number 13 again, by the way, and the number 6 and the number 7. The first 6 or 7 books of the Colburn Bible are in fact scrolls that left Egypt during the Exodus of Moses. Okay. So that knowledge found its way to monks who took it, Scottish monks who took it back to Scotland. At the time, the Irish and the Scottish were the same people, and they were stealing all the information that they could get because they knew that with the burning of Alexandria, that they were trying to eradicate all official memory of anything from that point on backwards. So they were stealing all of this stuff, every single scroll they could get, and they skirted them off to Ireland and Scotland. And then they had scribes recopy them. This is true. You can look this up. There was a book that was written about it, a documentary. It's called How the Irish Saved the World. You can look that up. It's not a joke. And a lot of people don't want to give credit. There's a lot of things that people don't want to give credit to, and I'm going to explain that. It has to do with the law of one, okay? To make their lie work, they had to stop all information of any group of people being in any way, including the Egyptians, being in any way global. So they were eradicating all of that information. Why? Because if anybody was global and people had the memory of that, then their technology would be greater than the technology that they were trying to tell you they had. Do you see? Okay, so why is that important? Well, because to realize there was a global network of free energy at one time on this planet, meaning that the pyramids that were all around the world that still are there, that were running, and all of the obelisks that most of the rich elites trying to destroy that knowledge and change the matrix knocked down or took and moved to different places. You can look this up, moved to different places of their power as a trophy to solidify to themselves and anybody else. It's like rich people wearing rich clothes to prove that they fit in, paying Kanye West $150,000 for a fucking t-shirt. Not literally, but they were like $25,000 or $50,000 for a t-shirt. And it was just a crap ass t-shirt that was tie-dye that he made for $2.98 and probably hired slave labor out of China to do so. I'm just saying. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that isn't what happened. Okay. However, being a rich and elitist, chances are that's what happened. He subletted out the stuff to anybody and didn't care to check whether it was the Uyghurs of China or any other slave labor race, which the Chinese don't care that people know about that, but there's, in this country, there's Mexicans that are slaves. Okay, there's and white people that are slaves, people that get taken by the cartel, which is propped up by the American government, okay, and allowed to do what they're doing by the American and the Chinese government. These people have slave labor. We know this because every now and then they get busted. They have sex slaves and they have regular slaves. Come on, let's be serious. Slavery didn't go away; it just went underground. That's all it did, right? So it's still here, worldwide, and in the world and off world. Okay, so the people of that Yucatan area and south of the uh, that region of South America, they believed that this was a dream state and this was all an illusion. Everything that most people are starting to realize that are becoming awake and that have throughout time. Okay. And it's not because if you ask them, they didn't find it because they went to South America and found it. Some did. Some did. Right? Most of them were reading scrolls that they had found that people had claimed were from that time period. Okay. And now we know that in Nova Scotia, which means New Scotland, by the way, in Nova Scotia, Canada, which is on the east coast of Canada, they have the richest mines there of copper, right? Just like they do in Arizona. And because of that, people were there. Now, why is that important? Because if they start telling you that people, first of all, their claim to the world is their land grants. Okay. So for America to be called America, it has to have been founded when Christopher Columbus came to America. They can't acknowledge that anyone was here prior except for these savages that they tried to eradicate and murder off of the face of the earth, and the American government and the Canadian government are still doing it to this day. You can look that up. Why? Because they would have the knowledge, first of all, and the access, and they lived here. So they could claim the North American continent. We can't have that if they want to claim this earth is theirs. So they're killing off as many of the races as they can and trying to keep them from educating themselves and trying to integrate them into our society so that their memory of their past goes away. The Australian government is doing the same thing to the Aborigines in Australia, and they have been for generations. They don't want anybody down there to know and remember what they know and remember. The same thing with Native Americans in the United States. Why? Because the Native Americans claim they could say, this is our land. We were here before you. We own it. And then after that, who were the first people? They don't want to tell you this because they can't have them owning it because they don't control them. The Vikings. The Vikings came to America. I did a study on this. I followed Scott Walter, who did a study on this, had 2 television shows dealing with this. Not to mention the guys up there in Nova Scotia in the money pit that's also doing this. And now they have another television show that they do that they do when they're not digging up there on the island, and they're chasing the Templars and everybody else around the world as well, like Scott Walter was. Okay. So the Vikings were everywhere. And if you come to Northern California and you go on Highway 50 up towards Lake Tahoe, when you get to Lake Tahoe on the California side, before you get to Tahoe City, when you can see the lake, there is a signpost on the side of the road that says Valhalla here, and it's a 1 lane coming, 1 lane going, a little windy road that takes forever to get to Tahoe, but it's a beautiful, beautiful drive. And I would say if you ever get a chance to do something, take that journey, start in Sacramento and drive and go up on Highway 50 and go all the way into Nevada on Highway 50. But along the way, before you get to Tahoe City or South Shore Tahoe, you'll find a place called Valhalla. And it is, in fact, an ancient Viking fort that has been renovated over the years to look the way it looked 2,000 years ago when the Vikings were, in fact, in California. Okay. And if you get a chance to go to Arizona, you can do the same. They don't have a fort there, but they have places where they lived in Arizona. Why? Because they had copper mines in Arizona. That's why Arizona's colors are the colors that they are, and their flag is the sun with the rays being red and copper and not white. Okay, because Arizona has for the United States, Arizona has the highest concentration of copper mines and copper in the whole United States, but in the whole Northern American continent, it's in Nova Scotia. And they now know, Scott Walter proved, that the Egyptians were mining all of their copper from Nova Scotia, Canada. And we know from the Aborigines, and you can check with Stephen and Evan Strong, who I know personally, and we've had many shows together and conversations about this. They've proven that the Aborigines met with, and they can show you hieroglyphs and petroglyphs that show that the Egyptians were in Australia, came there on ships, on boats. Okay, so they were worldwide. Okay, not just in that one little place. And the same thing goes for the people of South America and the people of the islands of the Pacific, out in the Pacific Ocean. And they've proven that the people from Fiji and the people from Hawaii had been to South America because their trade routes worked there, and all of their ships were built, their boats were built the same way, and they changed at the same time, meaning those people all met with each other and traded, and their technology, which is what happens when you have trade routes. If you have something that's new, you take it and go check out what I got, you sell it to somebody or trade for it, and you teach other people how to make that thing. Okay, and then other people want to learn how to make that so that they can sell it to other people. So the only way they could solidify erasing the memory so that you wouldn't know what Ra had to come through channeling between 1981 and 1984, right? Jen, welcome. And Peter, welcome. I didn't say hi to you guys. They had to eradicate all of that memories, and they did. For a long time, people didn't know this, and most people still don't know this. This is why, what does this have to do with the law of one? It has to do with the back memory and what has been taken from you so that this matrix can be usurped, can be overlaid with a fake matrix to keep you asleep. And why is that important? This is what Ra was coming through, channeling through Carla and the LL Research Group to tell the world to give back the knowledge that was taken from the planet itself. Okay? And that has been a concerted effort by those people who are in service to self to eradicate and remove all knowledge prior to the deluge from this earth. Only it didn't work, and it is still being found worldwide. And like I said, you can look up the creation story of the people in the Amazonian area, the Amazonian Valley of South America, and you can read it in the Popol Vuh, which is from the Olmec region, which is on the east coast, that has the northeast coast of Mexico. Yeah, the northeast coast of Mexico, and the Popol Vuh comes from there. And that has the ancient knowledge and snippets of all the different stories from all the different peoples. So they didn't say this is what we believe is the doctrine of the creation story. And I'm not going to get into the creation stories because I can go on for 2 hours just on the creation stories. And I'm not going to do that. Okay, that's going to be a documentary I'm going to put together, or we'll just do other shows on that. But I'm probably going to put the documentary together, if not write a book about the theological comparison of all of these creation stories worldwide. All right, so let me go ahead and continue here.
The thought of not being able is not a part of our basic thought form complex towards your peoples, but rather is a maximal consideration of what is possible. Question 7.3 Questioner, pi squared, do you mean that if 10 people call you can count that, when comparing it to the planetary ratio of people, as 100 people, squaring 10, getting 100? Is that correct? Answer RA, I am RA. This is incorrect. The square is sequential 1, 2, 3, 4, each squared by the next number. Question 7.4 Questioner.
So the word exponential would have been more of an appropriate word to be put in there, but for some reason he wasn't understanding that word. There's that word understanding again. He wasn't standing under the knowledge. He wasn't getting the knowledge of what he was trying to say. But exponential would have been more what he was, but that wasn't exactly what he meant either when Ross said that. See, there's me saying the word him again. What they meant when they said that. That's why they didn't use the word exponential. But we would probably now understand, there's that word again, we would probably now discern, understand, right? Let's discern. I'll try to use that word instead of understand. Glean or realize that word and associate better with that word than we would the square root, right? Exponential would be a better term to use.
Inaudible, use an example. If 10, only 10, entities on Earth required your services, how would you compute their call using this square rule? Answer RA, we would square 110 sequential times, raising the number to the 10th square. Question 7.5. Questioner, what would be the result of this calculation? Answer RA, IMRA, the result is difficult to transmit. It is 1012, approximately. The entities who call are sometimes not totally unified in their calling, and, thus, the squaring is slightly less. Thus, there is a statistical loss over a period of call. However, perhaps you may see by this statistically corrected information the squaring mechanism.
So I wanted to point out that in most of the Bibles, but the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Bible, in both of those Talmuds, there is the term that that was used by what it was supposed to be God speaking, saying, "Where two or more of you gather with the same thoughts, that will easily reach heaven." And that was in Matthew. What is that? Matthew 18, where literally it goes into saying, if you had an ounce of faith, you could literally move mountains, and where two of you or more gather, then I will hear your call and do your bidding. And that goes to the charm of making, right? Anal nathrak ufas pethod doth dienve, which translates into modern English as all that is nature and of time space, do heed my intention. And, or, do hear my call, do what I say, do heed my intention. And that is the 3 plus 3 equals 6, 6 plus 3 equals 9, 9 plus 3 equals 12, right? 12, and your intention becomes the 1. So that's the hex boson, the God particle, the creation, right? So that works on a creative scale, but it also works on reaching out to the universe. And the reason for that is that the mathematical equation, we've talked about this before, but I've never really gone into the math of it. Okay, so for people who are in service to others, which would be considered good in the universe, as opposed to people being in service to self, which is considered evil, to graduate or to move up to the next octave, right, during a time of culling or a whatever, for you to graduate at the end of a cycle, you have to be 51% in service to others. On the other side of the coin, because it's, you have to remember there's only 8% approximately, right? Evil people on the planet, and the rest are actually good. Or what is it, 18%? It's less than 10, or no, it's 10% or less. So it's about 8%. So on their side of the coin, to graduate on the evil side, they have to be 99% evil. They have to be downright vicious, murdering, killing, raping, pillaging evil to graduate. They have to be really bad. Okay? So that's the reason, if you look at what Ra is saying here, to break it down mathematically, it is easier. The people who are in service to self have a harder time and a lesser voice because there's less of them. So they have to be more and more evil to be able to graduate. Whereas people who are in service to others, because there's more of us, your voice counts as more when you are doing good deeds. So if two are together, your voice is not just two. If you're one by yourself, your voice is not just one, because Your voice has to be equal to that of evil people. So one evil person is not worth one good person. That is why, in the mathematical scheme of things, and this is what pisses off evil, and Ra talks about this, in that place that most of you know about but don't realize, when you go to sleep, some of you have that dream every now and then that you're in another place that's magical and that you're somewhere standing and there's other people that you recognize that are standing with you, but there's not a whole army. There's 5, 6, 7 of you. There's actually usually about 9, 7 to 9. There's that number again. And you know them. You recognize them and their way they feel, the way their eyes, when you see them, you can see their soul and you know who they are. And you guys are standing in a place where you're fighting a war against evil, and one person, one individual walks forward and holds off the onslaught of all of the evil by themselves. They are equal to the sum total of all evil. And that all evil can't pass. And that was what you were seeing played out in Lord of the Rings. If you've seen that first movie when they were the gathering and they were going on the quest, Gandalf, who is standing by himself on the bridge that is now, about to collapse, and he says, "You shall not pass." And he stands there by himself and he hits his staff on the, and it creates this bubble of energy around him. And he's standing there, and the Belrog, which is huge, evil, and is 10 times his size, comes up and he's just fire and he's scary. And in fact, to the point where Gandalf said, "Run! You cannot defeat this. Run!" He holds this thing off, and the only reason that he ends up falling with him is because he let down his guard at the end, and as the Belrog was falling, his whip caught around Gandalf's ankle and yanked Gandalf off, and he fell into darkness, which was supposed to happen, but he didn't know that, and he died, and that was his falling to hell, like Jesus being the Savior, and then his resurrection, and that's why he went from Gandalf the Gray, and when he was resurrected, he became Gandalf the White. Okay, so him by himself was able to hold off all of the evil of the earth, which was in the form of Belrog. That was, for those of you who are awake, that was what that was telling you. For those of you who are asleep, that was still telling you that through osmosis. It was getting into your brain and giving you that possibility that one single person with the right mindset and no fear can hold off the greatest evil that you can imagine. And that was that was the lesson that was being taught to you that you're unaware of if you read the book and you saw the movie and you didn't realize that. Okay. And then Casey said, "I was wondering why you hadn't answered me. Did you ask something and I didn't see it in the chat, Casey? I apologize if that's what happened. I don't see that anywhere." No, was it Denise? Denise didn't answer. You were talking to her. "I'm sorry, I'm back," she said. "I was wondering why you didn't answer." Okay, I thought it was me. I just looked at the chat and went, "What did I miss?" Okay, so there's a place, right, that you guys don't know about where that mathematical equation, what does this all have to do with anything, Leo? Pardon me as I burped while I was trying to speak. That is what he's talking about. What they, here I go again, see, the vernacular we use is programmed into our brains all our entire lives. What they were referring to in this mathematical equation is the fact that, and you guys don't know this because of the matrix being usurped and the way evil tries to present itself in this reality as if they're in charge, one. Two, they're greater numbers than we are. Three, they have more power than we do. And all of that is an illusion and a lie. That is why they live in fear, and that is why they are constantly on the aggressiveness through fear and stifling people as fast and as hard as they can to serve as an example to scare everyone else to shut the hell up. Because if you realized that you by yourself could hold off the entire evil minds of the American government you would become enemy number one to the American government today. And they would try to arrest you and put you in solitary confinement or kill you so that no one would ever know that truth. That is why they killed Jesus. That is why they tried to kill Mohammed. And that is why Jesus ascended. Although he died to prove a point, Mohammed said, I don't need to do that. I've proven my point, and Muhammad left before they could kill him. They tried to do the same with Moses, and that's why God didn't allow Moses to go into the land of milk and honey, because that whole thing was bullshit and wasn't the true creator of the universe. It was because God, what does God need a spaceship for? And God was floating with a floating city for 40 years to make sure that everybody who knew anything from Egypt was dead before he took them to the promised land. Okay. Riding the frequency. Welcome. I don't know who you are with that name, but that is a great name to have. Riding the frequency. Welcome, my friend, my brother, or my sister. With the vibration of riding the frequency. Hello. Right? So that's what, for those of you listening on the MP3 file, I'm putting it up on the screen. Riding with the frequency. I believe it's a female because it looks like a female icon that's being up there, right? It says hello with 3 hearts, right? Oh, Leanne. Well, welcome. Okay, so I know who that is then. Welcome, right? That's so you too, right? That is so you. Welcome. Yeah, welcome aboard. So I'm not. I'm because she didn't use her actual stage name. I'm not going to tell you who that is. But those of you who know who Leanne is, you know who that is. Those of you who out there who don't, I apologize, but I don't have permission. She is using that name, and but she did say her Leanne. So if she wants credit for who she is in real life, I'll let you, Leanne, decide if you want to do that and let people know who you are. You can type that in the chat. Okay, so the mathematical equation that is in the universe that you're not supposed to know, and this is what, just to answer the call, Ra is stating that for more than one of you, right, that you guys have a mathematical equation which is right, and that's that mathematical equation of the base root or the square root of your distortion plus the integer that is your wanting or your calling, because you have a voice that is 100 times more valuable or higher calling and higher power than you think you have, at least 100 times. Okay. So when you think you're alone and you think that your voice is just one, I only have one voice, what can I do? You don't realize that your one voice is worth the entire onslaught of all the evil. The sum total of all the evil is only in and of itself equal to one of you. If you understand, or there's that word again, I don't stand under anyone and no one does. If you realize your potential, do you see? And this is the information that they don't want you to know, that they erased when they were burning everything in Alexandria and when they were burning everything during the Renaissance, when they were getting rid of all the books, all the history, everything to wipe out all prior knowledge, and then lying and changing everything, making it that women are evil because they ate the fruit in the garden, become some snake told them to do so, and they lied to God, and then they convinced Adam, and he's innocent, that men are not the ones that are guilty, that women are, and men were just be dazzled by Eve because she was hot, and he wanted to get laid, and he was thinking with his dick, so he just ate the fruit because she said so. Right. And first of all, the entire universal mindset of the one true creator is not telling you that you can't know knowledge. So that whole scenario of you could eat from any tree, but this one was a fucking setup. Right? Why would you say that? There's a couple of places in history and the creation stories where the God, who's supposedly the good God, the all knowing, all loving, all seeing creator of the universe, tempts people on purpose to entrap them. We call that entrapment. But if you're children and you're uneducated, you're like, well, God said don't eat from that tree. Why would God tell you the fucking tree was there? Don't eat from this tree when you could put a fence around it. He's God. He can make that tree disappear and be so far out of your reach that you couldn't reach it. and that you couldn't eat from it, and you would never know about it. So if you weren't supposed to eat from it, God wouldn't have said, "Hey, listen, you can eat from anything on the but don't eat from this one." And I'm going to leave now, and I won't be back for a few hours, children. So if you want to get in trouble, now would be the time. That's just like the whole how simple and stupid the whole thing with 007 was, and Dr. Evil, when he says to him, "What now, are you going to kill me?" And he says, "No, I'm going to lock you in an easily escapable room with two inept guards." Because that's what basically happened every single time with 007. Instead of killing 007, the bad guy always took that moment to uncover the plot and spend an hour telling him how he was going to kill him and end him, and the whole time 007's going, yeah, and while he's trying to figure out how he's going to get out of there. And then he just Jedi mind tricks the fucking guards because they're too fucking stupid to see that what he's doing so that he can get away. That's what we who write call an impasse. We were blocked and we need something to keep the story going, so we just make all of a sudden something stupid happen. And every time I see that happen where it's completely out of character, when they're trying to kill off a character that is no longer needed in the storyline, or her or him dying in the story motivates the star to fight even harder, right? Then the person does something completely out of the ordinary. That's why I liked when Obi-Wan decided to allow Vader to kill him. He stops and sees Luke first, looks at Luke and smiles sheepishly, and then stops and says, "If you not strike me down, Darth, I will come back stronger than you could ever imagine." And then he just stood there and let him kill him. He became the martyr. He sacrificed himself on purpose so that it would solidify Luke not ever falling into his father's trap and not becoming succumbing to the dark side. Why was that important to Obi-Wan? Because why? Because we know that Luke had the same problem later on with his nephew, and that almost ruined him. But the reason that he was able to withstand all that was because of the experience that he had with his father when he was the same age as his nephew. And that was the only reason. You'd have to know the whole storyline and read the books to understand that. They didn't even talk about that. There was none of that going on in the movies, but it was still there and apparent in the movie, and that's why he ended up coming back to help them. Okay. So I liked that they did that in that storyline, because most of the time they do something stupid and you go, that person would have never done that. If you're paying attention to the characters, and I hate that, right? So when I was writing, even though people are like, "Oh my God, you're writing like as if you're a fifth grader," which I was told. Every time I turned something in, they said you have to dumb this down. People aren't going to understand it until I dumbed it down to a fifth grade reading level. People are like, "It looks like a fifth grader wrote it." Yeah, that's because I was told that the average American reading comprehension is fifth grade, and they wouldn't understand anything that I had to say until I dumbed it down. I wrote it in an eighth grade level, and they said no, and I revamped it to a seventh grade level, and they said no. You have to go to a fifth grade level. You have to speak to people where they are. They have a lack of education. They don't know how to read, and it's true, and it's worse now. The average American's reading comprehension is about third grade now. That's why people don't read shit. They want to see a video. They don't even, when you say something, you go, "Hey, you should go check that out." They go, "You got a link for that?" Because they can't figure out how to Google that shit. Can't figure out how to spell it. That's why they have to have spell check for everything these days, because nobody can remember how to spell anything. And then they spell it and go, "I don't know, I can't find anything on the internet." How about learning how to read and write, and you'll learn how to spell? Anyways, so your power. This is why you have to remember the energy of the 3, 6, and 9. We are the three energies. So you have to realize that it's 3 times 3 times 3. There's your exponential again, right? And if you guys are in any way a druid, or any way a pagan, or any way a Wiccan, or any of those religions that came out of the East that are here in the United States now, you know that the motto is, "Do what thou wilt, but harm none." And if you do something that is against people's wills and you harm yourself, you get your negative energy back 3 times 3. Why is that? Because it is the power of the universe. When we are the 3 energy, so right there, your 1 energy is already worth 3. Just your intention, your thought alone is already worth 3 of you. And then you take that energy and you add it to what has been created in the universe, which is nature and space time, and that is also the three energy. So your energy becomes the six now. It's compounded three times or one times six. And then when you take that energy that you put your intention into, when you put your intention into that again, it becomes the nine energy. So now exponentially, your energy is nine times more powerful than it was when you originally started. And then that becomes the God energy, the Higgs boson. And then when you add your intention, your energy one more time to that, it becomes the 12 energy. Okay. And the 12 energy is literally only intention off of the creation. That would be what the 13 is, 1 and 3. What? Right? The 1 and the 3 become the 13. So that it doesn't become, when you use the 12 energy and you add your energy, which is 3, it doesn't become 15. You become the 1. That is the energy of 3, 6, and 9. The energy of 3 being on run by itself out into the universe. Say it's spiraling outward, 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 outward. And then I'm just using it could be inward, it could be outward. It depends on the moment. They're both. And then the other energy is spiraling inward, 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 inward. Say the 3 is going outward and the 6 is going inward. The 9 energy is what controls those energies and sends them back on themselves. That creates what? The figure 8, the infinity, the infinite energy. Okay, so that is I don't know if that's as simple enough, but I know I've gone on a long time with this. But the however, the analogy that Raw is trying to get across here, which most people just listen to as math and went, oh, okay, so like yeah, like if 2 or 3 or 10 people get together, because that's kind of all that he says, right? That's all that Don says in his understanding of math, and he doesn't realize the depth of that. So when people say, I'm just one person, what can I do? You, with your intention, with the universe, with creation, and your creative ability, if you are in service to others, is worth all of their intentions of people that are in service to self by yourself. You cannot defeat them, and they cannot defeat you. So if you ever go to that place in what you think is a dream, but you know for some reason you feel that it's another world that you've gone to, another reality that's real, it is. And there really is a world that's going on there. And you are, and Ra talks about that at one point. I don't know where it is in the 106 sessions, but Ra talks about that, how one person stands and all of the entire army of evil comes and cannot get by the one person who says, thou shalt not pass, you shall not pass. And they stand there until both have expended 100% or 99% of their energy, and they collapse, and all of the evil runs the other way, and that person collapses, and the other 6 people or 7 or 8 people, usually it's 7 or 9, that are standing at the time, they go and pull back that one person, and one person walks forward while the other 6 or the other 5, right? Because that'd be 6, 7, or the other 7, because it would be 8, 9, or 5 when it'd be 6, 7, depending on whether you have 7 or 9 standing at once. Everyone else then recovers that person by giving them love and compassion and consoling and protection and everything that you need from that side of the Kundalini energy, which is the feminine, the peaceful energy, the nurturing energy, the loving energy that is the universe, and that recharges that person's batteries. And then that person, their job from that point on is to then only help and love and nourish that person who has to hold the line when they're done, until they've recycled through to the point where it's their turn again. And by that time, you're the strongest, and you're now back to where you were when you started, and you can now stand. And that is what they don't want you to know. They don't want you to think it. They don't want you to believe it. They don't want you to know it. But that's why you see the stories of saviors. You see the Thor character, who is the savior character or the defender of the human race. You see Jesus. You see what? Let's say Neo, Superman. Every single hero character in everything, in any pantheon, no matter what it is showing you that one person can stand against many, 300, a real true story of Leonidas, which is the word means Leonard, by the way, which means Lionheart, by the way, which is my name, Lionheart. That person understood, there's that word again that comes out when I'm not thinking, that person realized the worth. And there was the scene in the movie, but happened in real life, and that's why they put it in the movie, where he's said, Xerxes is coming, and wants to speak to you, my lord. And he says, well, then I'll go and talk to them. And he's eating the apple, right? And he's talking, and he says, well, there's no reason that we can't be civil, as Polonius kills the guy who's laying there wounded, right? And there's no reason we can't be civil. And then he throws him the apple. And he says, Sire, what if, his lieutenant then says, Sire, what if, or his general, what if they kill you? You go there and you kill you. And he looks at him and he says, if only. If we could only get that lucky, pray that we get that lucky, pray that they're that stupid, which ends up what happens. Eventually, they kill Leonidas, and he becomes a martyr, and all of Greece unites and conquers the entire world that Xerxes owned. Killed Xerxes, killed everyone, and took everything and incorporated every people and freed them and made them all Greeks. The reason we still have that story and the Greek language is because they conquered all of the known universe at the time. And that was eventually left to Alexander the Great. And his father said to him, Alexander, my son, ask for thyself another kingdom, for that which I leave is too small for thee. And Alexander pushed out even further and conquered the world until he died. I think it was of syphilis or something crazy, because he was bisexual and he screwed everything that moved. That's not a joke. They say he got bit by a mosquito and died from malaria. But I guess that could be it too, right? But a lot of those guys back there and died of things that had to do with a sexual nature. They just didn't tell you about it because everybody was screwing everybody. Let's be serious. The Romans, you can go to the Colosseum in Rome now and take a tour, and they'll show you the different baths that were there that you could go into. And it was men who like little girls, men who like women, men who like little boys, men who like men, women who like, and so you could go into any room that had whatever you liked in that whim of that moment that you wanted to have sexual relations with. Okay, that's true. I haven't gone there myself, but I'm really good friends with a buddy of mine who went there, and he said, "Bro, you have no idea. They had a bath for everything, every kind of sexual preference that you could imagine. The Romans were doing it back then. Okay, and it was open. It wasn't like there were signs on the freaking walls that said, if you want to have sex with a little boy, go in here. Sex with a little girl, in there. Sex with a little boy and a little girl, go in here. Sex with a man and a woman, go in here. Right? 2 women, go in here. No joke. Okay. So the math, getting back to that, getting off of the sexual thing and the conquering of the world, the math is that you alone are worth 100 of them, 1,000 of them. That is why the nefarious people have to stifle you and shut you up as hard and as fast as they can. And that's why they used to murder people like me on this planet. Me speaking the way I'm speaking right now would have gotten me killed in any other time than the 19th century and now. The 19th, the 20th, and now the 21st. Just these 3 centuries, these last 300 years, I wouldn't be persecuted, and I still could be persecuted in some respects in the 19th and the 20th century for what I've said. Right? Oh, and guess what? And the stupid thing crashed again. You see that? Just went down, and the thing came up. Right? So maybe we're just going to stop there and then pick it up later. I'll just continue talking because this will take me too long to reload the stupid thing. So I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to look for a better program, right? So it looks like that this is where I'm supposed to stay covering this week is this information. Why? Well, that's actually pretty important, right? Think about that. Most of everything they teach you is that your voice is tiny. Useless, tiny little voice. And they try to show you that the microcosm to the macrocosm, the other way around, the macrocosm to the microcosm. They try to show you by stifling you on the internet as quickly as they can on any of the platforms that they own and operate, by shutting you up if you say something that is not the way they liked it or what they're pushing. They do that with religion. They've taken control of all these things, and they've gotten rid of this information. Then they pervert the stories that are still left in to a different way of thinking. Like, for instance, like I said, the Garden of Eden story of Eve chewing on the fruit of knowledge. Well, what did they gain? The church will say, well, they gained what they weren't supposed to know, which was the knowledge of good and evil. God didn't want us to know that. That's a lie. That's a lie. Because if you read the scrolls and you listen to Ra, and I did this on my own without knowing Ra, okay, and I hadn't read the scrolls yet, so I want to preface everything that what I'm saying with I haven't been influenced by the Dead Sea Scrolls or Ra because I hadn't read either one of those until 5 years ago. Okay? Had not read the Law of One, none of the 6 books, and had not read the Dead Sea Scrolls until 7 years ago when I started reading that. And then Ra 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Or the Law of One, I should say. Okay? And I still came to the same knowledge. Had never read the Tao Te Ching, had never read the Buddha, had never read these. I knew the concepts of the ideology. I called it the way, which is what the Tao Te Ching means. The Tao Te Ching means the book of the way. But I didn't know that. I had heard of the different races of aliens pissing off the CIA and the American military because of the people that I know, telling the story of some of these aliens that came over during the exchange were evil, and they did shit like one alien would use his mind to just kill people for fun and laugh about it. Eventually, they had to kill that alien. He was just murdering people and laughing about it. He was evil in service to self. And the other ones that drove them crazy were the ones who were spiritual in service to others. And all they wanted to do was talk about spirituality. They didn't want to give any secrets of military technology or any kind of weaponry to the humans. And all they wanted to do was talk philosophically and spiritually and spiritual theologically. And they didn't fucking want that. Drove them crazy. Well, I took note of that. Why would that bother them so much? Why wouldn't they want to hear about? You can glean a shit ton about a society by listening to their religions, to their spiritual way of thinking. But they weren't smart enough to get that. They wanted instant gratification in service to self. Instant gratification. I want technology and technology alone. So they couldn't get the information that they wanted, and only the ones that would give them that was in service to self, and they were also making sure that they got something out of the deal. So it was hard. So they ended up trying to entice the ones that were. They found the ones that were just like them, in service to self, evil, twisted, and then they would say, "Well, how about we give you 88 virgins, American women that you can have sex with?" Or for the Draco, how about we give you some humans you can eat? Or how about we give you some humans that can be your slaves? Or how about we give you some humans you can do tests on so that you can figure out our genome, right? Which I want to point out that people say, well, how could our government have any kind of information like to be able to clone people? They haven't even mapped the genome. I'll have you know that if you guys watch, and you can look this up because it just happened. If you guys watch, it was either Jeopardy. It was Jeopardy. I think it was Jeopardy. It was yesterday on Jeopardy. If you watched it, one of the questions was about the genome, and in 2003, 19 years ago, scientists finished mapping the human genome. Do you understand that? Do you get that? Are you assimilating that information in your brain? 2003, scientists finished mapping the human genome. Okay, so when people say they don't know that much, like when they were talking about the coop, And when they were doing the test, well, how can they know what this nuclear test that they're using is going after a certain section of your DNA and saying this is where the molecules are that are in fact this disease, which was just a flu bug, it was not a disease, this flu bug, and how would they know out of the human genome where to look for it if they hadn't mapped the human genome? And everyone says, well, they haven't mapped the whole human genome, so they don't know. In 2003, they mapped the entire human genome. That's how they knew where to look. And the reason they knew where to look is because they're the ones who designed it. So they knew exactly where it shows up in your human DNA because they designed it to show up in your human DNA. I'm not going to talk anymore about that evil religion and that stuff because the algorithm will pick up on this and Facebook will take this information and give it to the DoD, which I'm not concerned with there, but they might stifle me and kick me off this platform before I'm ready to leave the platform. Okay. You only need a few cells, Karen, right? Wait, first is Peter says, I said this before. Let me put Peter up. I said this before. You should try Dragon Speak. Yes. He's talking about, I may do that. I may go ahead and bite the bullet and buy Dragon Speak. That way it's a better program and I can put that in there and Dragon Speak will talk and do the same thing. I'm going to look into that. Peter, you're absolutely right. So Karen says, and Peter's always trying to remind me of this. Every time I talk to him, he's reminding me of that. And every time something happens when I'm live, he reminds me of that. Thank you, Peter. Continue doing that until I finally get a better program, including buying Dragon Speak, up to and including buying Dragon Speak. So Karen says you only need a few cells to clone, right? That's true, right? You go into the hospital and take blood every few hours, lots of it, but yet, right? I don't have my glasses on, so I got to lean forward here. I may have to put my glasses on, but yet, let me look on the screen where it's bigger. Where is that at? But yet, forensics can tell anything with just a drop. That's in the movies, though, mostly. But you're a lot better off or closer to reality than most people realize. Hospital is taking your blood, I believe so. Yeah, they are. Oh, I know they are. When they draw your blood, you go and they go like, oh, we got to do like 5 vials of blood to do all these tests. I agree with you. They don't need much more. When I go in to do a P test for my A1C, I went in one day and I couldn't go, and I dropped maybe, I don't know, it wasn't very much. It was like 5 or 6 or 7 drops, and I put it in there and went, fuck, Hail Mary. I don't know if this is going to work. My doctor said they only need a drop. They only need a drop of my urine to find out what my average A1C for 3 months is. But you're telling me they need 6 fucking vials this big of my blood to do 5 tests? I agree with you, Karen. They're taking the fucking blood and they're running other tests on it. Many other tests on your blood that they're not telling you about. Okay? Agreed. 100%. Peter says you're welcome. Yeah, thank you and thank you again. Okay, so to reiterate what Rob was saying that was on your screen until it dropped off, until the stupid thing crashed on me, that one person's voice spiritually, if they are attuned in any way positive, not negative, and the more that you are in tuned in a positive way and spiritual and align your chakras and you're translating what the in Buddhism would call the Kundalini energy, which is the balance of the light and dark energy. People always say to me, how is it you talk about balancing the positive and negative energy, the light and the dark energy, but you're not saying to embrace evil? Because there's a difference between the energies of the universe that is the oneness and becoming. Do you see? Your being needs both of the energies of light and darkness, good and evil, war and peace. Hence the novel War and Peace. And what that was trying to teach you. You should read that or watch the movie and pay attention to it from an awake perspective of why they were saying war and peace and why it was so long. Okay? Because that's what they were trying to slow burn into your head. The balance of the Kundalini energies, those energies make up your genome. They make up the double helix. The double helix is, in fact, both of those energies connected by the glia cells in your brain, right? That's that little pathway in between. So if you look at the spiral, that's what the spiral in everything. Like if you look at the Viking, Scottish, Irish, Western, Southern Vikings, or even all the way into the North, they had the knot work. That knot work is the intertwining of two knots. That is that information. That is the, if you look at the, the Egyptian symbol of, and what we use for the doctors, what do you see? You see the double helix. That's the human DNA. The human DNA is the double helix. What is that? That is the spiraling of the two energies that the East call the Kundalini energy, right? The Ouroboros. Some of you know that as Ouroboros. The Ouroboros is where you get the aura, right? The aurora borealis. That is the mixture of the light and darkness energy. That is where you get that word from. So the aurora borealis, which you see as the lights in the sky, had a spiritual meaning, which was Bifrost, the rainbow bridge, which was the bridge between the mortal realm, Middle Earth, right, and the immortal realm. And the rainbow bridge, which was the aurora borealis, which is comes from the snake. This is in the Bohemian religion. The snake in the ocean, the dragon of the North Sea, that was actually the dragon of the sea, and the dragon grew so large that was in the water all the way around the earth to the point of biting its own tail. That was the what? Ouroboros, the Ouroboros, Ouroboros. So the aurora borealis is the spiritual blending, and that's why it was the rainbow, right? Which was all of the energy of the natural world and the spiritual world blending together, which is in a sense what's happening there, which is creating that light energy in the sky. So they were more awake spiritually than you realize. So the dragon of the North Sea, which was the Ouroboros, which was the dragon that was biting its own tail, is about death and rebirth. And the way to heaven from Middle Earth is across Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, which is the Aurora Borealis. Do you understand? Do you see? So that energy is the blending of the two energies, which is the knot work, and the knot work is always two intertwined as one. Never three, never four, never just one. It's two, and then they wind around each other. That is the symbol for the and what I'd love to learn more. You said I'd love to learn more, Karen, because Karen said what it was that Karen says. I have to back up and I have my glasses on, so I'm trying to get to where I can read it, right? So Mosca, right? Liberation from the reincarnation wheel. Now this is the Korean and Eastern thought, right? The wheel, right? Well, it's also in the northern as well. So it is worldwide. There is a way to exit the body at a 43-degree angle, and she shows the angle. Let me put this up on the screen. And she's showing a right angle that will open up the. I have to put my glasses on. I apologize. That will open up the ascension superhighway. She's talking about the Kundalini energy again. You leave the body in a spirit in the spiral out of the crown. Yes. Okay. And what doctrine is that from? What is that? Is that Bohemian, or are you looking at like the Korean, Asian, where they have the wheel with the 33 spokes? Or are you talking about the round wheel that the Hindus use that have the 33 spokes? Either way, it's still all the same thing that Karen is talking about. And that's what she's talking about, is what I'm talking about. Only I'm just showing you the Bohemian of the spirals of the and the Egyptian with the double helix. But she's showing you the rest of the world where they use the same method, only they show you in a different manifestation drawn in front of you, which I just talked about. You have the wheel, which has the spokes with the center over in India in the Hindu religion. And then you have the Asians, the Chinese and the Koreans, that have the center with the yin and the yang. And then they have all the little spokes going flat side like this, and it's going outward. And sometimes they have a circle around the whole thing. and other times they don't. But if you count them, there's 33 of them, and that's because 33 is the number of the human genome. So that's what Karen is referring to, and I'm not sure what religion that's actually from because that covers what she's saying, and the concept covers even with the spokes going either inward and outward or side to side, covers all of the East, right? So yes, in the shamanistic medicine wheel, if you look at the European shaman, which I have the druid title of Merlin, or if you get to the Americas, where you have the shamans and the medicine men and women of the North America and Central and South America, it is the same. Those people actually realized what was going on in the universe a lot more. This is what I was alluding to with the Olmec and the people of the Mayans of that valley over there, the Amazonian Valley, that they thousands of years ago, their ideology and spiritual mindset was what we are now, and what Ra was coming through with in 1981 to 1984, and what people over in the East and everybody are now starting to glean, right? And on a mass scale, because it was already being done on a minor scale. And you hear people talking about this. Maynard talks about this tool where in that song that I played, those of you who are in the group chat that I gave this to you last week, and we talked about that where all the different, I think Casey did, where she was talking about, I think wasn't it you, Casey, that were saying that you were a fan? And I'm gonna have to go back and listen to Tool now, because now you realize that they were a little more awake, and that this pain body is just an illusion. All this pain is just an illusion. That's the lyric from the song. So these bands going back, these rock bands going back to the 70s, 60s, they were very awake, doing psychedelics, very awake. The Doors, that's why they called themselves the Doors, right? Yeah. So yeah, LOL, it was me, right? So I was pretty sure that it was, but I talk to so many people and I'm in so many different groups, chat groups. Sometimes I make a mistake and I don't remember who it was that I had a conversation with. So I'm glad that it was you and that I did remember that from last week. Because sometimes I do that and I'm like, did I have this conversation with you? And then other times we haven't had that conversation yet and I'm having a deja vu. So that's why I talk about that. And I will say, correct me if I'm wrong, but we had this conversation already, did we not? And when people say no, we didn't, I'm like, okay, well, we're going to, and we're going to have it now because I have memory of us already having it, and now I'm starting to tell you about it, so we might as well have that conversation that I already have a memory of, because that does happen, and I've talked about that. The closer that you get when you're on the right track, let me quote a lot of what people have heard before. If you watched Battlestar Galactica in the 2000s, 2002 through 2000, and it was 4 years, so 2006, I think, or it was 4 through 8, 2 through 6, something like that. You should watch that. In that, the evil people, which they were neutral actually, but they were the hybrids. The hybrids were the ones who were controlling all of the ships and able to jump through light jumping, through hyperspace for the Cylons. Whenever somebody would go in and talk to them, they were very prophetic. And one of the things that they said over and over, all of them consistently, was all of this has happened before and all of this will happen again. And that is being used nefariously on this earth, because all of this has happened before and all of this will happen again. Because that's the way the cyclical nature, the spiral, which we were referring to before, the spiral nature of the universe is that everything is contained and it constantly spirals outward to a certain point and then flips over on itself and spirals inward to a certain point and flips over on itself and starts over. Everything is created by the creator at the 0 point, and everything goes out in both directions, inward and outward at the same time from that, and then is turned back onto itself and either goes inward or outward depending on whichever it was going before, and that creates an infinite amount of energy, infinite wisdom, infinite love, infinity itself. That is the perpetuation of the universe. So everything that has happened, will happen, is happening, and did happen all at the same time. Okay? So, but If you don't know that, then the knowledge of all of this has happened before and all of this will happen again can scare you into believing that, and this is where they take a little truth with many lies. Nefariousness tell a little truth with many lies. In fact, that was a quote that the devil supposedly had, when there is no actual devil. There is no one person that is equal to God that is evil. Not. Not. I just explained the math to you. That is the law of the universe. So that it doesn't, so one individual thought from the universal mindset, one of me by myself, is equal to all of them and all of the power they will ever have. Me by myself. You by yourself. You just don't know it. And this is where the teachers are trying to teach you all of this information. Right? If you listen to Eckhart Tolle, he has said this many times. You are everything you can imagine already. I wish I was a star. I wish I was beautiful. I wish I was. You are all of that already. You just don't remember it. Do you see? Part of your waking up, and this is part of the deja vu process, part of your waking, when you start with your vibration getting to a place where it's above the thinking mind, above the reach of the thinking mind, above the reach of your ego and the egoic mind, when you start gleaning that, you start getting deja vus. Why? Because you're moving into a realm that is 4D, 5D. Okay. And in those realms outside of 3D, 3D is the only place where time and space are not the same, where the past, the present, and the future are separated into three supposed illusions in your mind, are separating those into the past as before and it already happened and it can never be here again, which is a lie. The present, which is only now, and the future, which can never be because when it gets here, it is now. So the future is something that I want to have that will never get here. That's the problem that we have, by the way, is that when you're constantly thinking of the future, in the future, I want to do this. When the future gets here, it's now. So if you're not manifesting it in your now, you're manifesting it in a place that you're never going to reach because it's always outside of your reach because you're manifesting it in the future, which is not within your grasp in this illusion. So if you buy into the illusion and that everything is in the future and I will know it someday, when is that day? When that day arrives, it's now. It is now. So if you want to become something, you have to start becoming it now, not in the future. I'll get around to that. It's a little piece of wood that someone cut out that says round to it on it, right? I'm going to try. Try means don't, right? Do or do not. Not don't try. That was one of the lessons of Yoda that he was trying to get across, right? Yeah. Then he says, I always have deja vus and people tell me that I'm nuts. That's because they're not in any way on the right track. And they want to tell you you're nuts, and they're trained to do that because you're not supposed to listen to deja vus because you're supposed to be distracted by the now only, without the future, without the past attached to it. Self-serving, instant gratification of this illusion. You're not supposed to think about the future being now. You're only supposed to be thinking about now. You're not supposed to be thinking about the past, and I'm supposed to learn from the past and be the past and the present and the future all at once. You're supposed to be ignoring all of that and listening to your ego. So they teach everybody that if you have any extrasensory perception, ESP of any kind, it is the devil lying to you to trick you so that you'll go to hell. That is what the modern Christian and Jewish faiths teach you. Not a lie. Look it up. Ask your priest. Ask your rabbi. They're not going to tell you that deja vu is, in fact, you becoming, you getting closer to the one. They're not going to tell you that. And I'm not saying that from an outsider. Those of you who know me know that I have 4 different titles that are a priestly title from 4 different religions. Okay? So it's not that I don't have knowledge, worldly knowledge. It's not that I don't know anything about any religion or any philosophical thought or any spiritual thought. I am, in fact, a theologian. I have spent my entire life learning, and this is what I do when I'm not on here. I'm a nerd, and that's what I was doing yesterday and today. I was literally my entire day, yesterday and today, before I came on the air, was reading creation stories from around the world, comparing them. Not kidding you. Okay. So in case I miss something, I go back and if I get caught on something and I go, wait a minute, what didn't I hear that in another pantheon somewhere? And then I'll go and read them and go, there it is, there it is, there it is. That's how I started putting everything together that I called the way. And then I started hearing stories because of insiders coming to me and saying, there's the one thing that pissed off the CIA back in the 40s the most was the fact that they were spiritual. And they talked about the one. I was introduced to that 30 years before I even heard of the law of one. Before the law of one was actually being channeled, I had heard that. Okay, so before 1981, I was told from insiders that the little gray aliens, some of them, because some were evil, but the ones that weren't were very spiritual, and they talked about the one a lot. And then I had experiences that I'm not going to get involved in right now and talking about that here. If those of you who know me, you know I've covered that on my own, where I was told about the one. Okay. So this is something that has been coming through to me my entire life before I even knew the law of one. And I was piecing it together on my own. And I talked about this last week because Josie came into the audience, and I gave her, rightly so, gave her the credit of being the person who said, Leo, that's the law of one. You need to read that. I was like, what is that? What is she talking about? And she was the one who linked to me prior to that, by the way. The other video that I watched that had what's his name, whose name I can't remember right now. I can see his face, blonde hair guy that a lot of people are discrediting, used to be on Gaia and left Gaia because of their draconian ways. Can't think of his name right now. Wilcock, David Wilcock. And David Wilcock, unbeknownst to me, lived with Carla and Dawn. And she had sent me a video of his before she said, that's the law of one. You should hear about that. And so after the show, I was going to watch that. And then she says, that's the law of one. You should watch that. So I watched the video of David Wilcock, and he mentioned the law of one. And then I went, that's what Josie just said. And she didn't link this to me because he said the law of one in there somewhere. It was because he was other things he was talking about. So then I went, I need to look up the law of one. So I looked at the link that she sent me for that. And that was one of the videos that I used to play until they monetized it. And then I read all of the books and said, I have to do a show on this. And I did that. Weird, because it was in a different timeline than this one. Because in that timeline, I was done with that in 2020, 2019, or 2020. And in this lifetime, in this place, in this reality that I am now occupying in this body, this consciousness, I just got done with that in 2021, which is weird, right? So there's a difference between where I was and where I am. I shifted. My consciousness shifted to a reality that was almost identical to the reality that I was already in, and there were small differences, which happens, and I've had that happen to me more than once. They call it the Mandela effect because they just realized that when Nelson Mandela, people think Nelson Mandela died in prison, when in this reality he did not, and he became the president of South Africa. So, and a lot of people remember that. There's a lot that, so they call that effect, that when you remember something that is a deja vu, that you have a memory of another event happening that was similar to that, and that something changed, and you and a few other people remember that, or sometimes on a grandiose scale where 1 million people remember it, but the other 7.5 billion people don't remember it. Those 7 million people came from a different reality than the one that they came from was similar enough to where that event happened the exact same way that all of those people remember. But they don't want you to think about the expansion or the idea of the possibility of the multiverse, because that would suggest that there's something other than what we have here in this reality. That's why they try to eradicate the religion that was the Bohemian religion, because the Viking people believed in more worlds than this one. Okay. in just that one pantheon. They believed that. So so what so to understand, there's that word again, to glean, to fully ring out in your mind the law of one. First, you have to know what the laws are, and to learn what the laws are, you have to learn what they're not, and then you have to learn what has been taken from you, right? What has been taken out of your memory that you don't remember, and that is the laws of the universe and the laws of nature. And because it's in everything, we talked about this last week, that when you are awake and you look at it, it becomes so simple because it is literally in everything. That was what Neo in the very first movie got when he saw the zeros and ones and zeros, is that he saw, we don't see that, but we kind of do. We see the spirals, we see the pattern, we see the all of this has happened before and all of this will happen again. We see that cyclical nature of the universe, and we realize that the universe only goes outward to a certain place, and then it goes back inward and it becomes the one again. And that is the cycle of what we are striving to, is to go within ourselves, to work on the shadow work, to find that which is in ourselves, the zero point of ourselves, and then to align our chakras. And to do that in every single savior character has done that and journeyed through going to hell, ascending to hell, and then or descending to hell, which is a metaphor for going inside the underworld in the Egyptian pantheon, and their superstition or their myth or their spirituality. The underworld, and in other most other spiritualities, the underworld is in fact going in. It is the vernacular that's being used is going into oneself. Okay, and then the descent that was just hell is also the spiritual descent into yourself, finding your true self and being objective with yourself, and then learning to love yourself. And once you do that, you can then blossom and transform. That's why everything does that, right? The little worm goes into the cocoon and then transforms into either the beautiful butterfly or the ugly moth, right? Becomes one, or very beautiful or very ugly, becomes positive or negative. Not that the moth is evil, but in a visual sense, it's offensive. It's the yin and the yang. But they both have the same thing within them. So the moth is not evil. The moth just looks ugly, and the butterfly is not perfect. It just looks beautiful. Do you see? So Denise says, Leo, I'm sorry, when I'm having a deja vu, does that mean I really was there once upon a time? I apologize. No, that's a perfectly good question. And no, I didn't. No, I didn't finish that thought. Let me wring that out a little bit further. No. When you let me get back onto that point, right? This is what all of that transformation leads to. When you start having the deja vus, it's because you are, and this is what I was getting to, you have gone through the process or are going through the process of realigning your chakras, and you have found that which was in you. You may not believe it yet. You may not realize that you have started to balance the energies of both light and darkness, of both war and peace, hatred and love, and that you're starting onto your track and you're on the right course. So it might be that you're still spiraling inward to the descent, or it might be that you're on your way out. That's unimportant because it's the course is proper. When you start having deja vu, and you start having a lot of that, it's because you're on the right course that you're supposed to be on spiritually and at the right time. And because of that, your vibration as a whole, now remember that your sum total goes up in vibration even if you're descending into your darkness, because you're on the right path. You're on what they would call the righteous path. So because you're on the Goldilocks zone, you then start to perceive, and the closer you get to either the 0 point or ascension, or both at the same time, because that's what happens, you then start having more and more deja vus because you're getting closer to where future being my finger, past being my thumb, and those are becoming one with the now. So because of that, you're starting to perceive things that you think was is already a memory of the past when it hasn't happened yet. And it actually is still in the future, but you perceive it as in the past and it's happening now. Do you see? So to know one of the ways when someone asks me how is it that I can tell if I'm on the right path in my journey, do you in fact have deja vus or dreams that come true? If you do, pay attention to those and what you're doing in your life because that means you're on the right path. And when you stray off of that path in one way or another, up, down, left, or right, so you have to get that gimbal just right. And when you start, that's one of those signs that tells your psyche, your subconscious or superconscious, that that's the right course. You don't know that, but it gets in there through osmosis because those events happen whenever and they make you feel good as well. Because you go, oh, I already have a memory of this. It's comfortable. Do you see? And you would have the evil side say, no, that's the part. Remember what I was alluding to, where all this has happened before and all this will happen again. They try to tell you that it's the death and rebirth because their culling kills everyone, and that you are just remembering a loop that you were in before, in the lie that is perpetuated by the, oh, well, we've been here for 10,000 years, 100,000 years, a million years, and we keep living over and over and over and over. And because we've done it so much, we've already lived through everything that could possibly, and it's just a residual ghost effect of something that already happened before, because we are in fact stuck in a prison that was created by evil people that are controlling it, and we can't get out and we'll be here forever. All of that is a lie. But they use a little truth. This is what I was getting at when I said they tell a little truth with the many lies. They corrupt everything, and then they take the knowledge away, that, like me telling you that, you didn't know that already because you forgot it because it was taken from you. And every time you do die and get recycled, you have to start over, but that's not done by them. That was put in place by us. We decided that. We decided that when we were part of the galactic mind and we were trying to get ourselves to move a little bit faster, to have experiences, and every possible experience, it wasn't happening fast enough and we needed a speed up horse. And what we had created as the scenario, all of us had gotten lazy, so we were complacent in our own minds to our own creation. So we created chaos and the veiling so that we wouldn't know, so that the headless horseman, that was the story of the headless horseman, by the way, so that the headless horseman is chasing you through the darkness and trying to throw his head that is on fire at you and consume you and kill you. The boogeyman. That's what the whole Ichabod, you're Ichabod Crane. And you don't know, you don't remember that you're actually the headless horseman. Okay? What? Ichabod Crane was in fact the headless horseman? Yes. The headless horseman, when he was a Hessian, if you read the real story, when he died, he reincarnated as Ichabod Crane. And Ichabod, the reason he was obsessed with Ichabod Crane was because Ichabod Crane had his soul in his head, and he needed to get it back. And so he was chasing him. It was his ego. It was the darkness in him separated away from the innocence of himself. And that's why he was so afraid of that, because he was innocent and he believed that he was weak and that the evil in him, the warlike part of him, was stronger. And so he ran in fear. And so it was chasing him. Why? Because why did you think? They'd never tell you. Why is it that he wants just Ichabod's head, not everyone else's head? Because Ichabod had his soul, and his everything that he wanted in life was what Ichabod Crane had, including life itself, creation, love. Do you see? That was the story of that story that was being told to you. Karen says there are different aspects of yourself on different levels doing different things even now. Let them know that you are aware of them and unite. Agreed. Okay, and that is the truth. And that is what the story of Ichabod Crane being chased by the headless horseman was about. That is what the story of the temptation of Christ is about. Who do you think was tempting Christ? Christ was. That's why the one with Willem Dafoe playing Jesus got more people yelling about it than the one with Jim Caviezel. Why is that? Because if you watch the movie the Temptation, Last Temptation of Christ with Willem Dafoe playing Jesus, who tempts Jesus but his ego? The evil, the devil in himself is saying, you could have this. I will give you a wife and children. I will give you an entire life of peace, love, and freedom. This is what you could have. It wasn't a separate entity. Why do you think that only Jesus could see him? Well, because it was the devil and only Jesus can see the devil. That's not what Jesus was trying to show you. The descent that Jesus was showing you was his descent into his own spiraling down to the 0 point within himself to defeat himself, and then he ascended to heaven. That is what we're all doing. Same thing with Muhammad, but Muhammad went one further place and said, I fixed myself before I had to destroy myself completely, and then ascended to heaven when they raced to kill him. But Jesus made that happen on purpose to become the martyr, just like with what Obi-Wan did with Luke. Do you understand? Do you see? Then Denise says, just love watching and listening to you. Thank you for all you do. I thought you were making some statement. As I read it, I realized you were talking about me. I should have put my glasses on first. Thank you. Thank you. I love you guys. I love this entire world. I love everyone in the universe, and that's why I do this. Okay. The reason I came to this planet is because I love everyone, because you are me. I am you. So when part of me was stuck on this planet, I had to come to the aid. And that is what I'm here to do. I am here to help. That is why I came here. That is why they keep trying to recruit me. That's why I believe, like I said, when you listen to these stories of super soldiers, which I have questions about, but I'm not going to get into that now. But when I hear the stories, I'm like, I have every single telling thing of a 20 and back, but I don't have the memory in the waking mind. But I see people who I know have had them, and I go, I know that person, I know that person, I know that, and wow, I know them. And I don't know them because this body, I don't remember meeting them, but I know that I did, and I know that I know them. Okay. Every single person who says they've been on a 20 and back, when I look in their eyes, I go, I haven't met one. I haven't looked at one yet. I haven't actually physically been in contact with one and met one. But those on Facebook and on television, and I see them and I go, I know this person's not lying. They've been on a 20 and back because I know them. Right? That's the scary part. But I don't have the complete memory of actually doing it. I would love to sit down with the different people. Like in fact, Eisenhower, she just friended me. I didn't know it. I was checking my Facebook. I didn't look, and all of a sudden there she was, and I was like, oh hey, she just asked me to be friends. And she's probably just clicking on people, right? So I don't think she found me and went, I know this guy, and clicked on me, because she never messaged me, right? But she actually friended me, and I was like, hey, wow. Oh, okay, Casey. All right, let me go. Okay, I'm going to go down this road now, right? It's 6 o'clock. I can be on here for a little bit longer. Let me go down this road. Some of you out there that I know about this already, but Karen knows about this and Peter knows about this. I'm not sure about anybody else. If Reese was here, Reese knows about it. I don't know if any of the rest of you do. Okay. So okay. I don't know if you heard me talk about the temporal war. The temporal war is this is where people talk about. In fact, we just had Gary Osborne on, and he talked about the binary code coming from the future and being us in the future, coming back and warning ourselves about something that happens in the future. Okay, so there is a war that's going on through time as well as in this reality and in every reality. Okay, a 20, Eleanor, is that her name? Eleanor Eisenhower. Yeah, she's friends with you. Okay. So she just sent me a friend's request, Peter. So I don't know if you said something, right? He said she's friends with me, so just said okay, that just said I'd let you know. Oh, okay. So all right. So then that means either you told her about me or she found me and then realized we were friends. Something. Well, thank you, because you know that she's been on a 20 and back. Okay, so what a 20 and back is, and now this is where it gets weird, and some people like tend to run. Okay, but now remember that the Oracle calls me the history book of the universe, right? So one of the oracles, but the one that is in the coalition that Peter and I are in. Okay, so a 20 and back, as basic as I can tell you, is this: the U.S. federal government in this country, they look for people who are in fact wanderers that still have some of their abilities intact, that haven't woke up yet and don't realize they're wanderers. Those are the best kind. Or a person that is on this planet that has abilities, and it's a DNA thing that families have abilities. They get a hold of you before you're aware of who you are, and they try to corrupt you in some way. And they usually get a hold of you when you're young, easily led. And what they do is they get a hold of you, and I have the memories of this happening. I'm in school, and I had this happen to me, and I didn't know what these memories meant until people who've had 20 and back started telling their stories. And I'm like, wow, I've done that. You're in class, and someone comes knocking at your door, and you're somewhere between the age of usually 5 and 10 or 12. Usually after that, you start going through puberty. Women, it happens earlier than men. And once you start going through puberty, they don't usually come after you unless you're part of the system then, and then they continue with you. But this is what happens to you. They come and get you when you're young, and they come to your knock on your class, and they say they're looking for Casey. Casey, you're one of the lucky kids that was picked today. You get to go to the museum on a with a class of kids who are the lucky kids. You get to go to a museum for the day and see dinosaurs. And you're like, oh, cool. But you don't have to ask your parents. They don't know anything about it. And you never tell them about it. And you leave with 4 or 5 or 6 other kids, and you get on the small van, usually a white one, sometimes a black one. And normally you live within a few miles of a military base. And you get in this van, and sometimes the driver of the van is wearing military uniform, and sometimes not. And you're taken to a military base, and then you go into the military base and you go underground, and you are transported to another military base hundreds of miles away underground, and you do things for the federal government. And when you're on a 20 and back, they actually grow you in an instance from being the age of 8 to the age of about 18 years of age. And then they do genetic enhancements to you, and you become a super soldier, and you have the ability to learn shit really, really fast. You learn martial arts. You are a super soldier, and then you go to war off world for the American government for 20 years. And at the end of the 20 years, they then put you in a machine and regress you back to the exact age you were when they took you, and send you back in time and put you back in your body at the exact moment they took you out. And then they return you to school with implanted memories of going to some museum and seeing dinosaurs. But then you forget about it and don't tell your parents when you go home, and eventually you remember it when you get a little bit older, but you only remember that you went to a museum. And it doesn't dawn on you that you never had permission from your parents to do so until someone reminds you that every field trip you have to have permission for. And you go, wait a minute, I remember leaving the school with kids 4 or 5 times and never asked my parents. And then you go, what did we do all those times? And then all of a sudden the memories are kind of foggy, and they don't come back to you. And when they do, you have bits and pieces of a memory of going to a museum or going to see something or going here. And you're like, that's weird. Who was with me? There was like 5 kids. And you can never remember who the kids are that were with you from school and whether you're still friends with them or not. And some people wake up and remember those things, and Eleanor Eisenhower is one of them, and a few other people that remember they were on a 20 and back. They remember working for the government, being a super soldier, and being 20 years. And then when they aged out, age regressed back to the age of 8, put back in their body and sent home. Okay. And I have all of the earmarks of being taken out of class and being taken on field trips over and over with never any permission from my parents, and then having vague memories. I actually went to one of the places in San Francisco up on the Sausalito side where I went with a group of kids, and it was exactly what I saw. So it was real, but I was never really there. Okay. But I didn't know any of that until I started listening to these super soldiers being on a 20 and back. Some of them have their full memory and they weren't on a 20 and back, they were just super soldiers. So those people just remember I was a super soldier and I did this. They were never age regressed. Okay. So I have the earmarks, but I don't have the conscious memories. But I was recruited from the time of 11 until I was 27 years of age by the federal government, and then the Illuminati and those assholes are still, they try even now, every now and then, but really hard. I was taken out of class when I was about 11 years old. I talked about this many times. And I was taken to an RV which drove into the school, out behind the school in the playground, so it wasn't seen from the outside world. Myself and about 10 other kids, maybe. We were taken out there, and we went in. There was nothing but cubicles set up in this RV, and we were all assigned a person. And I think they were all female. I just remember they seemed to be more women oriented, and they all had clipboards and wore white smocks like a doctor. And they all had clipboards, and you were only to speak to that person and only whisper to that person in that person's ear, and they would whisper to you so that nobody else could hear. And you would go to a station, and at that station, different things would be there, and you would put on headsets, earphones, and then you would see something in front of you, either a visual thing, or there would be something there for you to do, or something there for you to look at, or whatever. And then we were tested on our cognitive abilities to break codes, to see shapes, to be able to discern differences, like before those images came out where you looked at something, and when you focused on the foreground you saw one image, and then when you changed your focus to where you weren't focusing on anything, it would come clear that there was another image hidden behind the image and you could focus on it. Those in 1974, 1977, 1977, I was being shown those. Those didn't hit the market until 1980s, mid 80s to 90s, for regular people. That was when they were mass producing them to see how many people could see that. And there was other things too. I had rebuilt a carburetor for a lawnmower. I was breaking codes. I'm a really good code breaker. Still see patterns in everything. I'm teaching myself. I'm teaching myself 23 languages currently. Not a joke. Okay. Currently teaching myself 23 languages, reading, writing, and being able to speak them. Spelling, proper grammar, proper punctuation. I'm not just learning words. I'm learning a grammar. I'm learning sentence structure. Teaching myself 20. It kind of varies. I think it just said 21, but I think it's more like 22 or 23. But there's a couple I haven't done for a while. Like I haven't done Navajo in months. That's not true. I just did Navajo about 2 weeks ago, but that was the first time in about 6 months I did Navajo. So a 20 and back is that where you've been taken by the government, and then you end up working for them as a super soldier or a code breaker or something else for 20 years, and then they age regress you and go backwards in time and reinsert your soul into your body, and then they change your memory. You don't have any memory. They wipe out your memory of that 20 years, and they insert the memory of going to the museum, and then boop, you go back to school. And that happens over and over. And I have memories of that happening over and over to me. And I lived in a town that was, the only reason it was there was because the Concord Naval Weapons Station was there. And that weapons station in the city of Concord in the North Bay or the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area was the largest naval weapons platform on the eastern seaboard of the United States of America until they opened up the one in San Diego, until they opened Miramar and San Diego. Okay. Not a joke. And the town I lived in, became a city of Concord, California. I was born in Walnut Creek, which is the neighboring city to Concord. Grew up in Concord. Literally, I could hear the gunshots on the firing range at the Naval Weapons Station from my house. Every night I'd go to sleep, and at 9 o'clock at night, the Marines and the Navy would go out there and start shooting, and I could hear them firing weapons. And if you called the police and said, I hear weapons fire and it's coming from the north, they go, that's the military base, you're fine. It's just them practicing shooting in the shooting range. That's how close I lived to the military base until I was 11 years old. And then I moved about a mile south in the same city. And most of my life was in that city. And I grew up in the Bay Area. I didn't leave and live. I lived within 5-10 miles of that military base my entire life until I moved to Arizona. And that was in 2013. Okay. So from the time I was born until 2013, I lived within 5 miles of that military base, and I lived within 1 mile of land that used to be either the state capital of the United States or a military base. Not a joke. I lived in the city of Martinez, which was the state capital of California before Sacramento. Which is now I live less than 5 miles from that, and I live within 5 miles of two military bases. Not kidding you. So I have my entire life, including when I lived in Arizona, I lived less than 3 miles from a military base. I have never in my life not lived more than 5 miles from a military base in my entire life to this day. When I moved to Arizona, I lived in Queen Creek. In the outskirts of town was a military base. The outskirts of town. Queen Creek was there because of that military base, and it became a international airport. Half of it is owned by the military still, and the other half is an international airport, but it's not as big as the Phoenix Sky Harbor. It's the next biggest one, and I literally lived there for 5 years. Okay, then I moved here, and I live. McClellan is 5 miles to the west, no, 5 miles to the south, and there's one more over to the west, and I live within 10 miles of 4 international airports, 2 of which are military. Not a joke. Okay, not a joke. So my entire life has been within reach of the deep state to take me and erase my memory and put me back into what I am in, and me not have any knowledge of it. Not a coincidence. Yeah, Denise says no coincidence. Right? Yeah, your brain is a computer. They can change your template at their will. But the UFOs. Let's go down that, Karen, because you're absolutely right. Let's go down that road. UFO abductees, the movie The Fourth Kind, which was based on, we talked about this last week, which was based on what's his name, Bud Hoskins, not Bob Hutchins, not the actor that's dead, but Bud Hopkins, the writer and psychiatrist. He was using hypnotism to regress people to help them to go back into their childhood to find out what traumatized them, a rape or something that happened to them, being abused or whatever, so that they could then deal with that and come forward and start to heal. And stumbled onto, he didn't believe in UFOs at all. You're crazy if you think that you were abducted by aliens in his mind. Stumbled onto over and over people when he would regress them that were saying they were taken and had things happen to them and they were doing medical experiments on them. And he was like, okay, describe what you're seeing. And I've read his research. He put books out, okay, where he told the stories. Missing Time is one, and there was I think 3 others. You could look him up. Look up Missing Time and find out who wrote that, and then you'll find his other books. And I read his research, and that's what they based the Nome, Alaska UFO abductions that became the movie The Fourth Kind on his research. Okay, he was the character that in the movie killed himself, who was the husband of the woman who was the star, who also was abducted and broke the whole story that they pretend was what happened in real life, which it was, but it wasn't. Okay, so because it was based on that, but the events that you see happened, but not by the people that you see happen in the movie. Even when they say this is real dash cam from the police, those were filmed. If you watch the DVD or buy the DVD, in the extras you can see them filming those scenes that they claim were in fact not filmed. Okay. However, everything that you see that happened in that movie happened in real life except for the suicide. Okay. So In Alien Abductions, they did the same thing, and that's how Bud got onto it. Was he would regress them. People were saying, they coming to him saying, "I'm having problems sleeping," and there's this owl that is constantly sleeping is outside my window, and he's there all night hooting and looking in my window, and I can't get it to leave. That's one of the overlaying memories that they give you, so that you that substitutes for the memory that you had. Because our brain, even though it's a computer, like Karen said, we tend to realize, and they talked about this. The movie was The Fourth Kind with Mila Jovovich. That's the one that I was referring to, that was based on real events that Hopkins went in his discoveries in real life, and they based it on his discoveries. His character was the character of the woman who is the star, not Mila Jovovich, but who she's playing. Her husband, who committed suicide, that she's having problems dealing with in reality, that he killed himself. She's having issues with that. That's why they all think she's crazy. In fact, it's because she's reading his stuff, his material, and his material is he stumbled onto the fact, and Bud didn't kill himself in real life. So that scenario never happened, but they played that for the movie in that way. But that movie is based on true fact that more people in Nome, Alaska have gone missing and have been abducted, and have been reported being abducted, than anywhere else in the United States to this day. More investigations by the FBI for missing people and abductions in Nome, Alaska than anywhere else in the United States, still to this day. And his research dealt with all of that. You can look up that movie, and you should watch it, because it's very woke, not awake, but very woke. The alien speaks to her, through her, and tells her at one point, "There's no need for you to pray for your God. I am here. We created you. And we can do with you what we will." And that's the evil-minded people in Hollywood trying to propagate that evil is in control and in charge, and that there's a creator. But that's one of the scenarios that happened here on Earth to get feet on the ground, was that evil said, there's scenarios for conquering worlds, okay? And this I know from the coalition that I'm in, and this is the reason why we are here, is because of this. There are certain scenarios that the Orion Crusaders, is what they called themselves when they left the belt of Orion, which Peter, myself, and a few others in our coalition chased them here to this planet with the Patal, to defeat them, and get them out of this area and this region of the universe. They called themselves the Orion Crusaders at the time. And you've heard them called the Illuminati, you've heard them called the Bilderbergers, you've heard them called all these different, the Skull and Bones, the Essenes, all these different throughout history on this planet. Okay. So there are certain scenarios when they come to a planet in 3D reality that they want to take over, they have to have your permission because of free will. Okay, so it's like a vampire. That's the whole story of vampires, and why the vampire has to knock on the door and ask permission, wait for you to invite them in. Okay, that is real in real life. You cannot be invaded by a foreign power without permission. So that whole concept that they're trying to convince you of in reality, that aliens are going to come down here and attack us, they can't. They can't do that way. Conventionally, they can't just show up like ID4 did at Independence Day, the movie. They can't show up here and attack us. They can't do that. It's against the laws of the universe, and there are governing bodies, which Raw alluded to last week and towards the end of the session. 53 race nation coalition that is currently residing in Venus, that is quarantining this entire solar system. Why? Because they did come here, and when they got here, they knocked on the door. They came down to the Americans after they had already came to the Germans. They went to the Americans, and they said, "There's this evil alien race." This is one of the scenarios that is going to come and conquer you, but we can save you if you allow us to come down to the planet and defend you. They get their boots on the ground because you agree to it. They take over the world. The other scenario is they say, "We are your creator God. We are the one who created you. You need to worship us because we created you." And then you worship them, and that's accepting them as your creator, and that's allowing them to get boots on the ground. Okay. So both scenarios, in a sense, happened on this Earth. And that is how this planet became stuck. And it's not as far back as you think. You have to remember, I've talked about this and I've explained the temporal war and the way that the temporal causality works, or the temporal weirdness that is like the quantum weirdness, is that when you are come here from outside of this reality where time and space is the same, where past, present, and future is all happening at once, when you come to this reality, you have to have a past and a present and a future. So when you get here, then you instantly have a past that goes backwards and changes the reality and everybody's memory of you, and you become on this planet. If you come here illegally, okay, and you come down and you land here as a conqueror, then you automatically have a past and you have a present and you have a future. So people perceive you in the past and think you've been here for 100,000 years and you've only been here for 10 years or 5 minutes. Okay. So that's what happened with them when they got here. They immediately, their past became past, and because they got here, Grover's Mill, 1938, which is crazy, right? That whole thing from War of the Worlds, which they said was a hoax and a fake, originally was not. And that's what, if you watch the movie of a Buckaroo Banzai, across the eighth dimension, that's what they talk about, or across the fifth dimension, or whatever it was he was crossing over. That's what they talk about there, is that whole Grover's Mill thing was actually a real invasion, and that's when they got here. But they used the electroids from the planet 10 coming through, and then they came through in 1938 Grover's Mill, and they were still here in the 80s when the movie was being done. But that was what that storyline was about. Okay. And then you were saying, Casey said, I saw a UFO when I was 17. And I have Missing Time. That's the other book that Hopkins wrote, by the way, Missing Time. That's one of the books that he wrote, which that was where he started figuring out that people had missing time, where their memory was altered, and they would see either the owl, or they would have something, or like my father had a lot of missing time, where he would be driving and all of a sudden he'd go, where the hell am I? And he would look at his watch and he'd go, my God, there's an hour and a half. I couldn't have fallen asleep. I'm driving. And then so he would go, where the hell am I? Look at the street, at a sign. He would go, my God, I'm 100 miles away from where I was. I got to turn around and go back. He had a lot of missing time. Told me about it. Didn't understand what it was. Okay. So then you saw it again 6 months later. Both times it was with my best friend. And you guys were both probably being abducted. The American government has sold the rights to alien races for technology, traded the rights of its people, and all around the world, the governments have done this for technology, and they've signed agreements with aliens, some of which already live here on the planet, but mostly it's like the Greys who don't have a soul, and they've been a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, which they talked about in Stargate SG-1, the television series, that they were a copy of a copy of a copy, and they didn't have a soul. And that was part of Whitney Strieber's book, Communion, when he asked the gray aliens, what do you want? And they said they wanted communion, because we're an upgrade. We, the human race, is at least 7 alien races make up this flesh body and our DNA. Okay. And they're royalty, galactic royalty. Okay. So we are intergalactic royalty, but we also are pretending that we don't have any memory. The people who came here searched high and wide for the Goldilocks zone, perfect place to come to here. Okay. So the human race is, and from our perspective, where the Big Bang happened. Okay. You need to realize that it looks like this Earth is 0 point for this universe. And because of that, the royal races of this universe have come to the place that is the holiest place in the universe and deposited their DNA. And that DNA was then used to make a being that is living with no knowledge of the universe in the most holy place where the entire universe, the Big Bang, happened. So we think we're on the outskirts of the universe when in fact this may quite possibly be 0 point for this universe. And from our perspective, it is. Okay. And we believe from off world that it is. So this place is the most holy place in the entire universe, and we are the most holy race. Not just because we were told by God we were the chosen race, but because we are, in fact, the royalty of this universe as one. And then the spirits in here, which we are the creator itself, we created this entire universe. So we are here pretending that we are asleep and that we don't know it, when in fact, and this is just a scenario that we're playing on purpose, a what if scenario. Well, what if we let AI run for a time? That's the devil. The devil, the AI is the new word for the devil. Okay? It's just the new evolution of the devil. So the devil was let loose on the earth for a time. That means there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. It means it ends at some point. That's why it's worded that way. So this scenario that everyone thinks, well, in the future the AI wins. No, no, it doesn't. It's not supposed to, because it wasn't created to. It has an ending to its creation, and it's not forever. And that's what's pissing them off. That's why they're trying to recreate. That's why they want communion. They're trying to figure out if they can synthesize the spark of life, the creation. That's what they're trying to do here. They're trying to recreate and become God itself. That's why if you read the book of truth, you hear that error created the human race. When they say the human race, they don't mean us in our spiritual mind. They mean the ego that is the evil. They created the evil thought that we allowed to happen. Do you see? So the error is the universal word for the devil, the universal word for and concept of the devil. Chaos, error. Yeah, Google the beast machine, Karen says. What is a star family again? A star family is a grouping of people, okay, a grouping of souls that you have an agreement with to be around each other and to stay together in multiple lives or all of your lives, to help one another to be able to ascend, to go from zero, from I'm a baby soul in this place, to graduation, from that all the way back to becoming the one, when you ascend all the way through all of the millennial. The reason for that is so that you can help each other, so there's something familiar. Your children come through as from your being your parents or your grandparents or your cousins. You come through as being their children or their spouses or whatever. The scenario changes each time. So the person that say that you have children with, that you have in your life, say that's the person that you stay with forever. Or maybe it's just a person that you have children with and then divorce in 5 years and you never talk to them again, but they're still attached to you in your life. Even though you're not married, you're still friendly with that person and they're still in your life. Or even if I hate them, but I still have to deal with them. That means that person and you were very close, probably in a past life, and in this life you're not being as close, because you might have been mother, son, father, daughter in your past life, and it seems kind of weird in this life to be together and have children. But you did that to propagate, to make sure that you gave the right place in DNA, so the right family happened, so that other people who were a part of your life before come through, who could have been your parents or your grandparents or your great grandparents, coming through now as your children. And then it could be that one of your children was a husband or a wife in a past life, and they died way earlier than you did, or way later than you did, because you died earlier. And you don't know that. You don't have the memory of that. That's part of the chaos. So you don't know that this person played that role in your life last time, but you're drawn to that person and you love that person unconditionally, but not on a physical level that you have in this 3D reality. Do you see? All of those things that happen here, if there's any kind of incestual ideology that goes on in your brain, is just part of the ego that happens naturally on this planet anyway, because we ourselves, when we created ourselves, still even gave ourselves that thought. And what would it be like if we had what is now called the Oedipus complex? Every possible scenario that you can imagine, be it good or evil, is what we're imagining to have happen, because we're trying to round out all that is positive and negative to get a full, because we have decided that that is the fullness of the universe, and without the negative, that's, well, a scenario that we came up with now to round out everything. So the dance is the yin and the yang. So all of that is, so it's not wrong, but it's not right. Do you understand? On a galactic scale, that whole murder, rape, pillage, and all of that isn't wrong because it serves the whole. But on a physical, three-dimensional plane, that it is wrong, and it's supposed to be taught that way because you're either supposed to choose to be good or be evil. Do you see? But you can't have one without the other. You can't round out the what we call the Kundalini energy. You can't round that out and have that balance and have both scenarios happen, which is the fullness and the richness of the universal mind, without having the evil and shit happen. But what about the galactic beings like is that Assyrian and Lyrian, that are like spirit guides? Ah, good question. That are like spirit guides, and what was I in spirit guides is more what I was talking about. Okay, so that is also the same people that you have around you. Okay. So your grandparents are now gone. If they haven't come back through as a brother, sister, cousin, or somebody else already, they're acting as your guides as well. You have your higher self, who is in halfway through the sixth density, and your higher self, who is in the eighth density, that also comes through, and you don't realize that it's you. Okay. And then there are people that are not coming through to this earth, spirits that are also here to help as wanderers, but they're not coming through. And their job is to be the angels that are the guides that are staying in the place of reflection, which is where your spirit goes when you die. It goes to the place of reflection, and then you sit there with guides. And these are the people that people tell you about when they take ayahuasca or DMT, or when they have a near death experience and they check out of their body and astral project, and they go to a place where there's someone there that's talking to you and saying, it's okay, you're going to be okay. Those are your ancestors, your dead relatives, and your guides, who are, in fact, attached to you as a spirit and other spirits at the same time. They work, they don't have to sleep because they're not in a body. So they're literally, they could be attached to a million of us on this earth. And every time somebody pops out and needs help, they go rush to them and help them, and then move over to help here and help over here and help over there. And then that's that spiritual family. Okay. So it's either people that are attached to you, yourself, your higher self, or your higher self, or it's people that's their job, is just to be guides and to assist, and just in case that your entire family happens to be down on the earth right now or occupied in other places, and they can't be there to help you in the place of reflection when you decide, did I learn what I set out to learn, or do I need to recycle and come back through again because I didn't learn this lesson or that lesson or this lesson the way I wanted to. So when you say, why is God allowing this to happen to me? Why is God making this? God didn't choose it, you did. But then you are God anyways. So in a sense, God's allowing it to happen to you because you're the one who chose your classes, right? So our soul families have been messed up. We used to know who was incarnate next. You would know who was coming through before their birth, but that was before the veiling. And once the veiling happened, you didn't get to know that. So they were messed up by us on purpose. Most of the things that we say that was messed up by evil, we're giving credit where credit's not due. They're taking credit for doing a certain thing that makes it look like they have more power than they do. Well, we're, because I'm evil, I messed that up and I don't let you know that anymore. That's not true. They don't have that power. They never had that power. They're just claiming to have done that when they didn't. They're lying. That's telling a little truth with a big lie. Okay, they pretend they know because they get to know a thing, because once they know it, they know that stuff, and they teach it to their kids to say these things. Okay, but they don't let us know that because we're their victims. They have to have the knowledge, okay, that has been taken from you. The only way that they know what to do to be in control of you is they have to know a thing. To control a thing is to know a thing. To know a thing is to be able to control that thing. To control a thing is to destroy a thing. To create a thing isn't in their vocabulary to know a thing. Think about that. Because it's not part of their religion. Do you understand that? Because it's not part of, they don't get creation. It's why the Greys want communion. It's why these people in the AI are trying to figure out a way of getting your brain, your soul, into a computer. Because if they can stimulate or they can simulate the mind and the soul and give it that spark of life, then they don't need God and they can conquer God. But that was not what they were created for, and they will never have that ability. So they have to trick us, Jedi mind trick good people into doing it for them. This is why I made the comment that we are the dwarfs under the mountain building the weapons for their war machine that the Vikings were talking about. The dwarfs under the mountain, when they mean dwarfs, they don't mean small people. They mean dwarfs of mind, diminished of mind. Diminished of mind. We are the slaves building the weapons for their machine. Do you understand? That's true. That's happening. In real life, human beings are building weapons that are being sent off world so that the Crusaders can conquer other, and they've conquered 21 other solar systems in this area, and they started from this one. Okay, and that came to us from the Andromedans, which is an alien race that came 8,000 years into the past. There's that number that people say that when Gary Osborne talked about the binary code that what's his name got from touching the spacecraft over there in Rendlesham Forest, that binary code was from 8,000 years into the future. 8,000 years in the future is when nefariousness, the evil, showed up in the Andromedan galaxy, and they're by their homeworld, and they said, "Where did this come from?" And as they traced it away from themselves, it went backwards in time. And when they followed it backwards in time, it originated from Earth in our past, not now, but in our past. Okay, 1938 is when that happened, and before that, when they got boots on the ground in Germany. By 1934 or 1935, they had boots on the ground. So the truth is, when the aliens got here, it was about 1934, 1935, when the door was open, and then when they had total domination of the planet, it was in 1938. Not too long after that, and that was when you had the flyover that there is film footage of, that's still out there in the universe, of flying over the White House lawn with spaceships. Those classic 50s style saucers, flying saucers. Real life, really happened. 1938. Look it up. In fact, if you go to Ancient Aliens Worldwide, which I'm the owner and creator of, on Facebook, you can, if you go back, and I don't know if they've deleted. It looks like they delete our archives after a certain amount of time. They used to let us. We used to have unlimited memory, but I guess Facebook got tired of storing all that memory, because some of the photos and videos that we had from, because I created that 10 years ago now. In fact, coming up, what is today? On the 20th or the 21st, 22nd of September will be the 10-year anniversary of Ancient Aliens Worldwide. Okay. So we had that video up probably back in 2016 or 2015. We had that video up. Okay. All right. So it's 10 minutes to 7. So I'm going to get out of here. All right. So we'll pick up where the machine crashed next week. Hopefully I'll have a better program by then, if not buying the Dragon Speak. And now the way I was moving and sitting, my shoulder's hurting. You're rubbing my shoulder. All right, guys. So I love you, and I didn't really mean to get onto. It ends up that you guys ask questions, and I go down the road of the history that has to do with my title, which was given to me by the Galactic Council of Alien Expert, which I didn't realize that I had that kind of memory until the Oracle reminded me that in calling me the history book. And now I realize why galactic history. I didn't realize that I knew this. And I still don't. I would love to get the memory back of the 20 backs that I've been on, because I know that I have the signs. I just don't have all of the memories. But I do know when I look into the eyes of some of these people, I'm like, I know that one, and I know that one, and I know that one. All right, guys, I love you. Have a great night. The law of one is warning about all of this and the corruption of the knowledge, and that's what is going on. And that was what all the alien stuff has to do with Ra and the law of one. It's the knowledge of all of that, as well as the knowledge of who you are, that they don't want you knowing about. And that's the shit they've been trying to erase and eradicate from your memory and keep from you. And they've been culling the planet. We're on the 7th cycle of the cullings on this planet, the last of which was the deluge that happened, the flood. That was the last one. That was the sixth one, and they talk about that in not Resurrection, but in Reloaded, the Matrix Reloaded, when he went to the architect, and the architect alludes to destroying the Earth 7 times, and we've gotten really good at it 6 times, and we've gotten really good at it. This is the 7th cycle. That was they're telling some truth with a big lie, because this is the 7th cycle. This is the 7th time, and it's been destroyed 6 times. I know 4 that I can tell you right now. Go and read the Colburn Bible, and the first 6 books will tell you about the first 4 destruction, or the last 4, the 6th, the 5th, the 4th, and the 3rd, right? Or the 6th, the 5th, the 4th, and the 3rd. Yes. Okay. You can read the Colburn Bible, the Scottish Bible, and read the whole thing, all 13 books. But the first ones came out of Egypt. Those are scrolls that came out of Egypt during the Exodus, and those tell about about 4 destructions of the earth, 3 of which most people don't know about. They only know about the deluge, the last one. And even the Australian Aborigines, when people say, "What about the before the deluge?" and they're like, "Ha ha ha, that was just the last time." There's been 6 times prior to now. We're on the 7th. So that's the 7 number. All right, guys. Right, and then each time we lose a strand of the DNA when they try to change the DNA, we have had that happen. If you could look back, our DNA was far more advanced, and each time they're trying to make us dumber by taking out part of our DNA and changing it, right? But that's also a countdown. I don't want to get involved in that, Karen, and I'm sure you know about that. It's also a countdown, right? So, and this is the 7th time, and that's why you hear that the 7th son of a 7th son thing, right? So look all that up too. All right, guys. I love you guys. Share this out, share this out, share this out. And I'll see you guys next week. And maybe on Ariel's show somewhere in between. We just got to figure out when. All right, guys. I love you guys. Have a great night.